Hi, Lisa.
Hi there, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
I think you can go and you might be able to full screen.
Sure. Okay. We're going to work on a few Zoom settings here.
Okay. Well, that was
But-
one of my questions, was is there going to be a camera on the room? So that's great.
We'll just do the best we can from the laptop here.
Sure.
But otherwise, your audio is coming through the PA, so
Okay.
pretty good. I might turn it up a little bit.
All right.
Go on here.
Is there going to be a moderator who can like interrupt me if there's questions or anything? Or can somebody designate themselves?
We lost your audio. Hang on a sec.
Oh,
My thing. I just turned that.
Lisa, why don't you try saying something?
well, I was just asking, is there going to be a moderator? No?
We're not hearing you yet. Give us a
Okay.
minute.
All right, well, I'll just keep talking so you can hear me if it comes through.
Something just kind of popped.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, pop's not good. Did it pop in a good way or in a bad way?
Anything?
Anything now?
She's still talking, but not hearing you.
Okay. I'm just yammering.
We had to go through.
Nothing. Okay, let's see.
Oh, we can check the sound settings. Yeah.
Let's
Go
see.
to speakers. Or you want
Go
me to-
ahead. Go ahead.
And say, do I need to change my microphone? I think that's the only thing I've got here. I've only got the one option. I can hear you guys. I'm always a difficult child. I understand. So,
We're doing a little troubleshooting on our end here.
okay.
Bear with us.
No problem.
We had you and then we lost you, but we'll get you back.
Okay.
We're going HDMI out.
Okay, you guys are muted. I can see that. Oh, now you guys are unmuted.
Oh, we were muted.
Yay!
No, I
Oh.
had hit that before.
Oh.
I had just muted it, or I muted us.
Okay.
Just
Okay, you're still muted.
we can hear you now.
Okay,
Is that the
all right.
volume?
Okay,
We won't touch this.
adjust the volume on here,
Yeah.
and then
Okay,
we will be muted on our end.
Oh, right,
Yes.
okay, yeah. Is there Q&A or anything, or is it just?
Yeah, the only challenge is going to be Q&A, Lisa.
well, yeah, so is there gonna be anyone who might be designated as a moderator who could either unmute and ask questions or at least type in the chat if there's questions?
Anybody who want to volunteer to be moderating in here during the workshop? Basically, if there are
Come
questions,
on.
come up and unmute so Lisa can hear the questions. Any volunteers?
I'll send you a present.
What's your name? Zach. Okay. Yeah, it's just exactly. We're gonna keep it muted. If you guys have questions, just come up and unmute and ask questions. And Lisa, maybe give an opportunity every so often for
Oh,
that.
yes, definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
And
I'll
we're,
read an intro for Lisa. That I'll do that part, but then I gotta move on.
then you're out of here.
Yeah.
And it is being recorded, so you'll have that.
Yep.
And then at the end, since I don't have well, not everybody can see the chat. Can I get a class list at the end so I can either email out some of the links or I can give them to you and somebody, WLIA can email them out, however that will work?
Sure. Yeah, just send me an email
Okay,
afterwards and we'll get you the list.
okay, sounds great.
Right here. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then I couldn't share earlier. Let me see. It says host has disabled screen sharing.
Okay. Why don't you try sharing your screen?
Okay, I just get an error.
Okay,
I get a host disabled participant screen sharing.
see what I can do here.
Okay,
Try that, Lisa.
beautiful.
Okay,
And I want screen 3.
okay, I'm gonna turn the camera so you can see the room as best as possible.
Okay,
Don't want to bump too many cables here.
there you go.
Can everybody hear Lisa okay? Yeah, your audio's coming through nice and clear.
Okay, good deal.
Okay, I think that's about the best we can do on the video for you.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, I'll do a brief intro here and then hand it off to you. We're good, thanks, Will. Okay, thank you everybody for joining the workshop here. Parcel Fabric, what you need to know now with Lisa Schaefer from OS Associates. Lisa was planning to be here in person, but due to the storm, she had some issues with her flight coming out of what, northern Minnesota, is that right?
Yeah, Bemidji. Yeah, we had about 5 inches, so they canceled the flights.
Yeah. Well, so thank you for being here and being available via Zoom. Lisa, we appreciate it. Lisa has over 20 years of experience and practice in the field of land records, including development and migration of data in many formats, including AutoCAD, MicroStation, coverages, shapefiles, geodatabases, and Parcel Fabric. She likes to be on the forefront of new enhancements to test them out and pass along information. When not focused on parcel data, Lisa is usually found cheering her son on at football, hockey. Please welcome Lisa Schaefer.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually, my son's is on the bus on the way to a hockey game right now. So playoffs start today. So they're heading down to southern part of Minnesota. So we'll see if they get there. Last time they tried to go north to War Road, the bus went in the ditch and they didn't make it. So we'll see what happens today. Okay, well, hello. Some of you may know me, some may not, and that is just fine. Like you said, I tend to tag myself as a parcel loving, puzzle solving person, but also teenage boy mom who's into a lot of sports. So yeah, so like the intro was lots of technology from AutoCAD to Parcel Fabric, but I love being in land records. And so to me, the Parcel Fabric is just another stepping stone that improves upon what we've started, right? Everything that has been going on, whether you're in AutoCAD, you're in coverages, you're in shapefiles, geodatabase, whatever you're in now, getting to the Parcel Fabric is another stepping stone to improving upon what you have. So just by a raise of hands, since I can see you, how many folks are in the Parcel Fabric already? In one way, shape, or form? Okay, I'm seeing like one hand. All right, fantastic. And are you in Arc Map Fabric? Yes, no, Pro? You're in Pro? All right, okay, woohoo, already into Pro, I love it. All right, well, we're going to go over some items today of what has been improved upon, what has changed, what some of the enhancements are. So I want to go over what some of the latest updates are going to be. And so right now we are talking about what is in 2.9291. I'm in 291 as far as Pro goes, and that syncs up with our Parcel Fabric version 5. And generally, if you're in an enterprise, that would be enterprise 10.9.10.9.10.9.1. I am going to be demoing in a file geodatabase just so I didn't have to worry about connectivity, but all of these same things would be available in an enterprise situation. So I want to show you some of those latest updates, what some of the new capabilities are in these scenarios. What are some of the new resources that are available or some of the enhancements to the resources? And along the way, I'm going to sprinkle in any tips, tidbits, miscellaneous items. So as we go, if you have questions, please just somebody, unmute and shout out the question, or chat it in the, type it up in the chat. Either way. So anytime that you have something, please interrupt, and I'll stop and ask for questions if there's anything specific, but don't hold your questions, just ask them while we're there so that we can get the answer in real time, and that might trigger somebody else's question. All right, now to me, 3 hours is very, very, very short. So I'm going to, and I usually over plan for material. So hopefully if I sound like an auctioneer, you will tell me to slow down. Otherwise, I'm going to keep chatting away. All right, well, I will say welcome to my home office. Hopefully you're not really seeing my closet doors behind me and the cat walking back and forth. So yeah, hopefully it's not too distracting. All right, so the first thing I want to show is actually something that hasn't been updated. We still, throughout all of the Pro Parcel Fabric deployments, we still have a single option, which means you do not have to have enterprise. As a single deployment, it is a file geodatabase. And then if you do have an enterprise system, we have the enterprise deployment option. For either of those, you still need to have a standard or advanced license. So you cannot do Parcel Fabric with just a basic license. It does need to be standard or advanced to be able to do that. If you are in an enterprise system, and if you are beyond enterprise 10.6.1, I believe. If you are beyond 10.5, there is an add-on Parcel Fabric user license type that you will need, and we'll get into that in just a moment. At the single user type, because you're not enterprise, you're not using branch versioning, etc., you do not need that add-on user type. So that is something that has not changed. There's still single user deployment or an enterprise deployment. All right, everything from here on out, there are changes. So the latest updates that are going on is that we have, because the Enterprise 10.9.1 has come out, we now have Enterprise 10.9.1, which then syncs up with your Pro release of 2.9, and they should put the X behind there, 2.9, 2.9.1, which is out. And then that syncs up with Parcel Fabric version 5. We do like to stress that you want to keep these things in sync across the row. If you are in, let's say, a Fabric version 3 and you have increased your Pro to 2.9, you're going to find that there's going to be some hiccups. Some things are not going to talk to each other very well. There have been improvements to the enterprise side of things and to the tool side of things in Pro that no longer work with a Pro version 3. So you really want to keep them as close as you can to keeping in sync across the row. And that is one thing that Esri is working on. It's not necessarily there yet. You can see they attempted it with a Fabric version 4 to try to have it work for multiple Pro releases. And so they are working on that so that they can have, working to extend the Pro release so you can update your Pro before your enterprise. That's always the holdback for folks, for counties and that we've talked to, is they might have an enterprise release scheduled maybe once a year, but Esri is definitely coming out with Pro releases faster than that. So when new Pro stuff comes out and you open Pro and hey, there's an update, you could grab that update. Don't. Not unless you know how that's going to affect everything you're doing. It's really what version of enterprise do you have, and then work your way back across the screenshot there. So if you are in, let's say 10.8.1, you're going to be working with Pro 2.6, and they are coming out with a new 2.6.9 patch here next month. March 17th, I believe, is when they're planning to bring out the new the 2.6 patch. So it should be 2.6.9. And then you're going to want to make sure that then you're working with a Fabric version 3. You cannot use a Fabric version 4 with 2.6 or with 10.8.1. It's not backward compatible that way. So really it all begins with your enterprise if you're going enterprise. Okay. If you're doing things in a single user deployment, so you're working in a file geodatabase, then the enterprise doesn't matter, and you can increase your pro, and then as you increase your pro, you can upgrade your Fabric version. So again, just keep in mind that if you have other programs that rely on certain tools that are available only in 2.6, make sure you keep your tools there. You're not going to want to go back and forth. Some things are definitely not backward compatible when it comes to Pro. Okay, so that's the latest that's out there right now as far as the Pro release, Enterprise release, and the Parcel Fabric version. So what I'm demoing today will be, this is going to be a single user because I'm using a file geodatabase, but it is Parcel Fabric version 5, and I am using Pro release 2.9.1. And I'll show you that when we get there. All right, so my plan here is I've got a few updates I want to show you on screen as far as slides go, and then I'm going to switch over to Pro and do most of our workshop in Pro, showing you some of the enhancements. As far as other compatibility, database compatibility, notice that Oracle Cloud is still not supported. That has not come out. I don't know if it ever will. I don't know. I don't generally keep up with Oracle. But I do like to know when things are supported and when they're not. But at the moment, Oracle Cloud is definitely not supported. However, if you are Microsoft Azure client, yes, that is still supported. Same version, even though we've gone to a Fabric version 5, the Azure SQL database version has not changed. So you shouldn't be needing to do any upgrades that way. And if you're Microsoft SQL Server or SQL Server version, notice that has not changed either. If you are Postgres, there are more options available to you now, or higher versions. So 10.17, 11.12, 12.7, 13.3. I don't know how many Postgres users we have in the area, but I do believe most clients seem to be a Microsoft SQL Server. But if you're on the IT side of things, those things may be of note. So if you do plan to make changes or upgrades, just be aware of some of those versions. Okay. All right. So coming out directly out of the 10.9 functionality matrix, you will see that the Parcel Fabric service, which is it's a service for editing. We use branch versioning to serve your service, all right, to serve the data via service to you so that you can then create your own editing version and do all of your edits and do your reconcile and post. The branch versioning and then into a service creates some additional behind the scenes ease of use functionalities. So we don't have to worry about trying to set up a daily script to compress the geodatabase and things like that. Branch versioning takes care of those things. So when it comes to the service here, we can see that GIS Server Advanced or the ArcGIS GIS Server Standard are the places in which we can create that service for editing. Image server, no. Geo event servers, no. So if you have multiple servers set up, we do need to make sure that to be able to generate the Fabric editing service, we are looking at either Server Standard or Server Advanced. So if you do, and I know a lot of folks have separate image servers and things like that, that's fantastic, but we do have to work up a different server to be able to serve out an editing service for Fabric. Oh, and I did put in, and this is one of those links that I will send to you, or it will be sent to you, whether it's from me or from the WLIA group. But I did put the link in here as far as upgrading your geodatabase SQL Server. So if you do have questions on how to upgrade that to your latest version and things like that, you'll be able to have that link right there as well. I'll leave that for a second if anybody's trying to write it down, but beware, I will be sending that via email, so you'll get all of that information. Any other links I show in here as well will be emailed to you. All right. Additionally, as far as user type extension, when you are in an enterprise system, the Parcel Fabric will need to be branch versioned and then served via an editing service. And so that is showing the GIS Professional Standard or Professional Advanced. The closed circle, the two at the very end, that means that it's included. So you will have that Parcel Fabric user type included if you have Professional Standard or Professional Advanced. The open circle is showing that for an extra cost, you can get that. Okay. Most of the time, I believe that those who have been working with it are already using the standard or advanced licensing, so it is included. But yeah, so just beware if you are working strictly with, say, a creator license or something like that, it may be an additional cost to get that Parcel Fabric user type. I don't think we've had anybody who's had to do that because they've always been a part of standard or advanced, but just beware. Okay. All right, another item here. This is purely a matter of opinion as to how you want this to function. So real-time capability. Yes, 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 there is real-time capability. So I could do an edit in the Parcel Fabric, post that, and somebody in the field within seconds can see my edit. Awesome. That is a great capability. So it can be published. So if I've got my editing service, I post that, somebody might be out in the field with just a viewing or a map service. They can see that. They can consume that as another service, be able to see those real-time edits. However, a lot of people have shied away from that simply because pushing data in real time might be an IT system structure where you've got two services pulling off the same data. It could just be they don't want to have something, say, inside a firewall, they want outside a firewall, all those kinds of considerations come in. So a lot of folks are opting instead of an actual real time, they're going for a near real time, which means they have a script that might publish out of the Parcel Fabric and into simple feature classes. And then that is what is being pulled by, let's say, other online solutions or apps, maps, things like that. So nobody in the field is directly accessing the same data that's currently being edited. I think that's more of a comfort feel for IT departments and things like that, that nobody can see exactly what it is I'm editing. I have the, let's see, I have the safety net that if I post a bad edit, I can go back and grab that, correct it before anybody's actually seen it. So there's a little bit of that going on as well. So it's a matter of opinion and comfort level. Do you want to use the real-time capability to be posting a very similar service off the same data off your actual Parcel Fabric? Or do you do sort of like, say, a daily script that publishes data to a different data set, and then that's what feeds those online applications and templates and such? So it is a capability that is there, it's available. However, I think I've only really seen one or two folks actually use that. Most folks are doing or are opting for a near real time by doing the overnight process, and you're able to see those changes the next day. But it gives them the safety net to be able to make corrections if they notice they posted something bad or something like that. So it is definitely a capability. I will say that capability is not new at 2.9. It has been there, but more folks are starting to get into that capability as they get more comfortable. Excuse me, I get more comfortable with being in pro, working with services and things like that. So completely a comfort choice, but I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that it is possible. Esri's not lying when they say that. It's just that a lot of folks are not opting to do that part. Okay, so I am going to show some of the new capabilities, functionalities, things like that that have been in 2.8 and 2.9. And I will let you know there are some things that I'm going to show more when I get to 2.9, but I want to show you some of those things that happened in 2.8 if you're there or if you have gone to 2.9. So I'm going to focus on the 2.9 in a little bit, but I do want to go through some of the 2.8. Before I dive into the actual pro side of things, are there any questions when it comes to the server versions or branch versioning or anything like that? And if you do have questions and you want to shout them out, I can't hear it unless you unmute.
We have no questions at this time.
All right, thank you very much. Perfect. Okay, so I have a few slides. I just want to highlight some of these things and then I'll go into Pro and show them. So as far as some new capabilities that came out with Pro 2.8, some attributes are being delivered with, I'll say with the system. So whereas we've always had the ability to generate or create our own attribute rules, Esri is actually shipping some attribute rules that are built in. One of those, which is a fantastic enhancement, is that must have a record parcel rule that was once there is no longer an actual parcel rule. It is an optional attribute rule. Yay! So if you migrate your data into the parcel fabric, most likely your data currently may not have records associated to each and every parcel. That being, say, the deed number or whatever document it was that created that particular parcel. So when that happens, there was a built-in parcel rule that we couldn't change, that we couldn't remove. It was there, and it was a rule that anytime you validated your data, it would say, hey, these parcels don't have a record. And it would take over your screen in that reddish, pinkish, salmon-y color. And it was very annoying because then you'd have to go in and either select all of those, mark them as an exception, and then everything would turn from red to green. Well, it's still showing as an issue. It's just showing that you've made the exception. But now that is strictly an option. It's an optional rule. It is delivered when you go right into 2.8. It will be there, but you have the ability to go in and remove that, or to at least just disable that particular rule. It is a validation rule, and I'll show you where that is, and then you can remove that. There are other attribute rules that have come with 2.9, and we have a lot of additional items there, options that we can use or not use at our discretion that they have brought in with 2.9, and a super easy way to be able to find those, use them. We don't have to know the arcade. We don't have to come up with all of the if-then statements and all that fun stuff. They've done it for us and brought it forward in a nice, easy format. So I'll show you what is there at 2.8, but then I'll also show you the enhancements for 2.9. A couple other things here at 2.8 before we switch over. This is something that was requested over and over and over again, and I was one of those people who wanted this. A traverse closure. So in Arc Map Fabric, and anytime you use the traverse tool, even outside of Fabric, you always had what you can see sort of there at the bottom in the red box as your closure report. The first few versions of Pro Fabric, that was not there. And that was very frustrating to say the least. So in 2.8, when 2.8 came out and was shipped, the traverse closure report is there along with other options. So I can tell it what style to close. So if I'm going to use a compass rule, transit rule, or if I just want, say, that last line to snap to the beginning, I can do that as well. And then I have the ability while I'm there to be able to define what is closure tolerance. By default, it ships at 1 foot, but you can change that. So is 1 foot too much? Only force it to close if it's less than, say, 1/4 foot. Those are all options and tolerances that you can change. So those items, I will show you where those are and what some of the other items are, or other options are. You can see some of them there. You can import or export to an Arc Map style traverse file, which are really just those .txt files. So if you have some of those saved from your Arc Map traverse tool, you can import those directly here, or you can export from here out to an Arc Map traverse file. So those two items I can say were not a highlight for me, but just being able to see where I am sitting for closure, I can decide what type of method I want to close it with, and I can decide the closure tolerance. Those were important to me. So you may have other things that were important there, but the fact is we have it all now. Yay. All right. Additional items here. So in that, I call, well, Esri calls it the heads up display. So usually when you're in Pro Fabric and in the map and you're in your view, there's a little heads up display toolbar. It's 2 buttons to create a record. Okay. There are some additional options there, and I'll show you some of those as we get into the actual Pro software. It used to be just the few to create a record, manage record, activate a record, that kind of thing. But now we have a lot more options available to us, being able to zoom to things, pan to things, showing attributes and such. So a lot more options on that heads up display. I can say that I've used a few of the new enhancements. I don't use all of them, but the fact that they're there makes it much easier to be able to grab those things very, very quickly right on the screen. Feels very interactive. I don't have to open up all of the records table and then go find things from there. I can just grab them right from within my map, within my view. All right, and then we'll go, one item that I was particularly fond of here was data engineering. And as part of my role here at ProWest, I do a lot of, say, reporting, a lot of charts, bar charts, things like that. And having this available, data engineering, creates those reports for me. I don't have to bring data, and I don't have to export it out, bring it into a different format. You know, I'm very much a Microsoft Access. I know, old, but I knew it. So bringing things in there and trying to create charts and graphs and things like that, I can do it all in Pro, and it takes my Fabric data and does all of this for me. And then I can export out the table or my chart as a graphic, as a table, whatever I want it to be. And I have all of that right within Pro. And so as data changes and updates, I can very easily just go ahead and modify those things. I don't have to continually be exporting data out. I can set up my project with my data engineering pieces in there, and I can just go in and update the bar chart, re-export either as a graphic or as table data, and away I go. So if you're one of those who needs to create reports or things like that, especially maybe it's just a once a year, an annual basis, but having the data engineering built into the data side of things into Pro really helps. So I don't have to try to learn Excel and do pivot tables or things like that. I don't have to know multiple pieces of software. It's all built into Pro, where I'm comfortable with my data. It's all in the same location, and it has made things very easy for me. But I'll show you where some of that stuff is. If anything else, it's fun to play with, fun to see how your data stacks up. Okay, oh, sorry, yes, and there's the bar chart. Forgot to bring that up before. All right, and then the last piece I want to talk about before we go to 2.9 then is going to be that we can now share data as a schema only XML workspace. So if you're trying to, share a web layer, share as a layer package, you now have the ability to just share the schema. So if you're trying to, maybe with your neighboring county, you want to have a very similar schema, you're going to go back and forth, you can send them just your schema, and they'll be able to see all that, and they don't have to go in and wipe out your data, anything like that. You can just share the schema as an XML workspace, schema only type of option. So yay. So yeah, if you've got multiple, cities, counties, anybody who's working together, you're able to make sure and send back and forth schema items without having to send all the data. Makes it very quick. Smaller files move faster. So. Okay, so with those items, kind of moving quickly here through the 2.8, I'm going to open up Pro here and go through some of those items so you can see what it actually looks like. Since not everybody is in a Pro Fabric, I want to show some of our environments here. First thing I'm going to do, let me see if I can move the Zoom bar off my screen. Make it small. Nope, that's okay. I will just deal with it. No, I guess I can't. Oh, well, okay. All right. Well, what we've got then, I wanted to show some of those things we just talked about, some of those attribute rules. So if I were to go, and here, I'm going to close some of these things that I had open before. I'm just going to close those. I can go into, let's say, I'm just going to my tax parcels where we're talking about the rule about must have a record. It used to be, and I'll show you here on our fabric, I would go to my properties and I can go into my source. And there, well, I used to have down here another item in my right list, the right-hand list. There was another item down here that said parcel rules. There was another list down here. And part of that parcel rule was that it would say that all whatever feature it was. So let's say tax parcels must have a record. So that item for parcel rules is just no longer here when you look at your fabric. And just so you know too, if you want to know what fabric you're in, you come into your source, there's the parcel fabric, drop that down so we can see that I am using a parcel fabric version 5. And then it tells you the compatible release is 2.9 to go with that. Okay, just so you know where that is. So we can see that, so parcel rules is no longer an item there. So if I want to see what my actual attribute rules are, that is a per feature class. So I'm going to have attribute rules on my, say, tax parcels. Those are going to be different than the attribute rules on my right-of-ways or on my subdivisions. So to see what attribute rules you have, you'd need to go look at each of the classes individually. So I'm going to just right-click in my table of contents on tax parcel, and I can go to my data design. That's something that changed as well. It used to just be called design. Now it says data design. I don't know why, but they did. And I can go to my attribute rules. All right, so in my attribute rules, I can say this one is one that I added. That's not one that ships. But if I go through over to my validation rules, I now have a rule that says must have a record. That is what used to be a parcel rule that was not editable. It could not be reconfigured, anything like that. It is now an attribute rule, and I can delete that rule, or at least at the very least disable it. So if you don't want to necessarily run it right now, you can disable it for the time being, but leave it there. And then down the road, if you decide to use it, you can re-enable it with the enable rule. But yeah, so now this is strictly a rule that you can go ahead and delete that rule. And then just make sure that anytime you have a green item that you make sure to save that, and then that will save that in as your list. Or in this case, if I were to save right now, it would delete that rule. I do not want to delete that, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to actually hit save, but so it is definitely a rule that you can interact with and you can modify right now. So I could come into my expression and I could change the expression. Right now, it is just saying, if it's empty, return it as an error. It's an error that, if there's something that doesn't have a record, it's specifically looking for the created by record field to be populated. If that is empty, it is going to return as an error. Okay, so you have the opportunity to reconfigure this or delete or disable, however you want to interact with that particular rule. You have that ability. If you are working in an area, if you're working in a county that keeps track of errors, as far as you have, say, an internal list of error types, error numbers that may be across, all of your solutions, your editing software, anything like that, you have the option here as well. Sometimes folks just leave this blank because they don't, but this could be, like they being Esri, sorry, has entered in error number 1000. That's an arbitrary number, might not fit your system, but you can change that. So this would be, so if this popped up as an error, it would say error number 1000. It wouldn't say error 999999. We've all seen those, right? So instead it would be error 1000. The message would say it must have a record. And you can see we have this severity as a 1 through 5. Oh, I've already got it hooked. So I could modify that. So the severity right now out of the box, it's 1 through 5 are your options. So yeah, and then if you want to modify that, great. If you want to delete it, great. Otherwise, you don't have to do anything. You can leave it. Okay, so that is one of the options, and I'm just going to leave that particular screen open because we are going to come back to that when we look at some items in 2.9. So now we can see we're going to be getting more and more. So more attribute rules are going to be delivered with the Parcel fabric as versions continue to increase. However, they're not going to automatically be put in, and that's something I'm going to show you here in a little bit. But instead of just automatically loading all of these attribute rules, Esri has given us a new way in which we can bring them in. That way they can just continue to update in one place instead of multiple places. So I'm going to show you that in a little bit with 2.9. One of the other items that we specifically talked about was the traverse tool. So if I go into my modify group and go to the traverse tool, or if you're a drop down type of person, yeah, this thing is really in my way here. I wonder if I can. I might just have to make that a little smaller. Okay, to get into here. So if you are a drop down type of person, you have your traverse tool right here on the records pane, and right now it's in the favorites, but you can get to that. If you scroll down, you can find the traverse tool down there as well in the COGO grouping. I tend to use my modify pane instead. I like to see them just in alphabetic order. It's faster for me to get to. Everybody, to each their own, and that's just what you get used to. But once I'm in my traverse tool, let me get that open again. Right off the bat at the bottom, you can see that I do have my closure box. So it's going to tell me as I start to draw what the misclosed distance and ratio are, any calculated area that's in there. So you can kind of see if you're getting close to, say, your deeded acreage, and then what closure method is being used. Okay. And that's just at this point in time. I can go into my, I see I have lines, but I can go into my closure settings and I can choose snap my last line to close specifically. I can choose the compass, which is a default, and I can modify what is the default as well. Or I can go to transit rules or compass rules as far as closing that traverse. And you can try them out. Once you have all of your line work in there, you can change that and click the adjust. It will show you the differences between them. So is the bearing going to stay the same and only the distance changes, vice versa? If you have snap just the last line to close, how much error is going into just that one line? You can see all of those changes before you commit to any one of them. So it doesn't have to be that you use the same rule all the time. You can modify those per traverse. Okay. So I could switch that over, and it does tell me in my closure box, my closure report, that I did change that. I also, if I go into I call it the options, people call it the hamburger, whatever you want to call it, into the 3 lines, right? If I go into my options here, I have the option to import or export traverse files. I can also tell it to force closure. So it's going to force it to be a closed loop. To me, that's on the fly. It depends on the traverse. Sometimes I am drawing a closed loop, sometimes I'm not. So that is definitely something that I do on the fly, but that is completely up to you. And then the closure tolerance. And that's what brings up let's say a little box here, a little dialogue. And I can set if I want the 1 foot or sometimes just half a foot, or if you're more metric, you might be in meters or something else. Okay. So you can change what that closure tolerance is, and it will then let you know if you're within your tolerance, you have closed, if your closure is high precision, low precision, whatever it may be. All of those things will be reported here at the bottom of the traverse tool. All right, so the traverse tool, some of those things have been improved upon. Things have been added. So where this didn't used to be here in earlier versions of the Pro Fabric, it is now there. So yay, very happy about that. I can see how things are going. Generally what I find if I have, maybe there's a tiny little segment or I'm reading through a deed and I somehow missed a line, I'm going to see very quickly if things are not lining up the way they're supposed to. If my misclose is way off, if my acreage is way off. It's nice to be able to see that before I've typed it all in. Then I can fix things very quickly. Just out of curiosity, whether you're Fabric or not, the Traverse tool is available. And it was available in ArcMap as well as now in Pro. Are you Traverse tool users? Yes, couple. Okay, all right. So hopefully you're familiar with that and being able to not only draw things out, but if you did miss a little line or something, you can add in and you can reorder some of your lines and things like that. So Traverse tool is very handy for that. I will say when I am doing, I'll say more of a systematic drawing parcels in, maybe from scratch, maybe I'm redoing an area that was particularly bad. I do use the Traverse tool quite a bit. If I'm just doing the occasional update in an area, doing a split or something like that, I generally don't use the Traverse tool. Not that I'm trying to say one way is better or not, but just I was just curious as to how many folks use the Traverse tool and things like that, because I know that I tend to go back and forth, but I think it's just everybody gets used to a certain way of doing things and kind of get your methods going. When you enter items into the Traverse tool, do you use the shortcut of 1, 2, 3, 4 for northeast, southeast, southwest, northwest? Or are you typing in the letters? Okay, so you're using the shortcuts. Is everybody else typing out south 19 dash blah blah blah? Okay, all right, so I'm seeing that too. Okay, are you aware there's a shortcut of 1, 2, 3, 4? So you never have to take your hand off the number pad. No, okay. Just going to show you real quick. So no, I'm not going to try to draw on the back of that. That would be bad. But if you're entering in, so let's just say I've got a start position here. Let's say I'm going to go to the southeast 45 degrees. Zoom in just a tad. Okay, so I don't have to type in anything with my left hand on the letter part. I can just type in 45 degrees. And if I want to go to the southeast, that is in the direction 2. Okay, so northeast, I know I'm backwards, but northeast is a 1, south, and then it just goes clockwise. So southeast is a 2, southwest is a 3, and northwest is a 4. So all I'm going to do is type that part in, and then I can tab over or just hit enter, and that takes me over to my distance. All I did was hit the tab or the enter, and that automatically knows that by me typing 45-2, that is south 45,000 east. And then I can put in my distance and I do that. So I don't have to type in those letters. I can just type in the 1, 2, 3, or 4 as the last part. So you see, I didn't even type in the zeros. I just did 45-2 and it filled in the zeros in the middle. If I wanted to put in not only the bearing or not only the degree, but I also want the minutes and seconds, then I would type that in as well. So then I could go that, let's say we're going to go 60-24-56. And then from here, I'm going to go, let's say in the northeasterly quadrant, I'm going to enter that over and you can see it already populated my degree, minutes, seconds for me. And then whatever that might be. Okay. So you can see that it's putting that on screen for me. Okay. If you're not familiar with the Fabric in Pro, you can see that right now, as I move my cursor, I have these tails following me around. That is what's called dynamic constraints. Excuse me. If I were to hit tab, that's using my Traverse tool. But if I were not in my Traverse, I'm just going to finish that. Okay, so now I have a parcel there, but I'm going to get out of my traverse tool for the moment. But if I wanted to use my dynamic constraints, and this is where I would go if I'm not using the traverse tool, I could come in here and just say I'm going to create a parcel, and I am going to just hit tab, and you can see now my bearing has turned blue. Don't do like a 78 because that doesn't exist, right? And we'll go, and I can still enter just the numbers with a -1, 2, 3, 4. Tab one more time takes me into my distance. And now it has gone that way. And I can just continue to tab. Now this is not a traverse tool. If I make a mistake and I miss a line, I've missed that line. I can't just add in another one somewhere. I would have to finish this, go ahead and add a line, move the other lines, etc. This is very quick to do on screen for something simple. But if I have a very long traverse, say an entire subdivision that's a lot of segments around there, things like that, I'm going to use the traverse tool. If I get stopped in the middle, I get interrupted, I can export that out as a text file. I can import it and continue the next day. The traverse tool definitely is a lifesaver for very long descriptions for me. But if it's something very simple where I'm coming in with maybe it's just 2 lines to split a parcel or something like that, generally I'm going to use this dynamic constraint on screen type of system. And I generally probably am not doing it with an actual polygon. I've probably done it more with my lines instead of polygons, but you can do it with either. It's completely up to you and it depends on your situation. But just know that you have the ability to do dynamic constraints, which has always been part of the Parcel Fabric in Pro. But I know that a lot of folks don't use it, and I'm one of those who actually does. So I just want people to know that it is another option, even if it's not something you're comfortable with, that's just fine. Just be aware that it's there. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just get rid of that. But anyway, so yes, Traverse tool and some of those enhancements came out with 2.8, and they continue with 2.9, clearly. As far as other planned enhancements with the Traverse tool, there's nothing that's sort of in production at this point. But if there are other enhancements that you are looking for in the Traverse tool, by all means, I will show you how to add that to the ideas page. We'll get to resources and how to put your ideas up there. We'll get to that toward the end today. Some of the other things we had just talked about with enhancements in 2.8 came with the heads up tool, which is right here in the map. Most folks say it's in the upper left. I say it's in the northwest corner. Whatever you're used to saying or how you're used to giving people directions. So right now I do not currently have an active record, and that's fine. I'm not doing an actual edit at this point. But what's nice is that in the menu, so in the little cogwheel there, I have a lot more options here than we used to have in earlier versions of the Parcel Fabric in Pro. So right now I can go ahead and create a new active record. I can go into my Manage Records pane, and that will bring me to a lot more options. I can activate a record if I had an item, say I had a tax parcel selected that had a known record. I can activate that record right here. It will also show me some of my recently used records. So if I've been creating things, especially something just in the same day, things like that, I can see what those recently used ones were and be able to select one of those. Zoom to, pan to, select the record. Wonderful, moving around. I can open up the attribute table, just showing the selection, which is great. I love that part of things, whether it's here or any other time. If I have a selection from my attributes, I like to go and do the, open the attribute table, just showing the current selection instead of having to open it all and then go down there and say, just show me the selection. I like being able to do that from whatever context menu I'm in. If I do happen to have an active record, it can show me what features are in that active record. So I can select those, which often shows me if I've made a mistake. It happens. So if I have accidentally left a particular record active too long and I have made other edits that should have been part of something else and not this particular document, I can see that. I can reselect certain features and assign them to a different record, which is what that next one is, to assign selection to a record. So if I have misassigned anything, I have the ability to correct that. And then of course, we can always go look at the individual properties of any one particular record. So keeping in mind that a record is a term that in ARC map fabric, that was what we used to call plans. That is now just changed terminology to become a record. And as a record in the ArcGIS Pro fabric, it is an actual spatial feature. In ARC map fabric, it was strictly a tabular item. Just kind of was additional information. It gave you a way and a means to search for things, to do some of these things like zoom to, pan to, select, etc. But now it becomes a spatial feature. It is not, however, another spatial feature that you have to maintain. It is strictly something that is maintained by the software. So if I could create a whole table of records, and if none of them have any features associated, there's no spatial content. But as I assign features, so tax parcels, right-of-ways, whatever you have, as I start assigning features to records, the record itself, that spatial feature, will become the outline of however many features are in it. So it creates its own spatial extent by whatever features are included in that record. So it's not something that we actively interact with as far as generating a record polygon, but those record polygons are created on their own through the software. So as you're editing items, you may see a record start out with a polygon, and then as you continue to build things in that same subdivision or whatever it might be, you'll see that record polygon expand. So it's nice to be able to see where things have been modified, where those records sit. Not something you have to have turned on at all times, of course. It's just nice to be able to see where you've done work, especially recently, versus what you had when you initially migrated your data. All right, so those items are there. They're obviously still here in 2.9, but all of those were included with the move to Parcel Fabric, I'm sorry, Pro 2.8, which was then Parcel Fabric version 4. Okay. All right. Oh, the one thing that I was very excited about, well, two things. One of them being data engineering, but before I jump into that, I want to show you, since I'm here, the share only, share as schema only. So let's say I wanted to share my subdivision layer with the neighboring county or with the city, the county seat, that type of thing. So I can just click on that. It's like, okay, yep, subdivisions. If I go to my share ribbon, so let's say I only want to share that one. I can share this as a layer package. So up here, I can click on layer. And in my sharing as a layer package pane, I have the option right here under options, right, to share this as a schema only. Okay, so you can put in all the other items here, but I can include, or I'm sorry, I can share as strictly a schema only item. So I don't have to worry about how big this is going to get. As an XML schema only, it's going to be a very small file that I can share with folks versus, including all of the data and things like that. I mean, if you're a very large county, you've got the city of Madison, you've got thousands of subdivisions. Are you really going to want to share all of that? And it's going to be a huge file. Maybe not. If you're only trying to make sure that you've got similar schema going on, you just want to see the file structure instead of trying to do screenshots of the data design and the fields and stuff like that. You could very easily do this and share this as a layer package and give them just your schema. They can import that, which is great because with Pro, being able to just select the certain fields that you want to copy and paste into their own, man, that is huge. That is such a time saver. I don't have to type things out and worry, did I spell it right? Was that a capital I? Was it a small L? They look the same. What am I going for there? Instead, I can just export this out. They can import it. They can grab which fields they want, copy, paste it right into their own, done. So we've saved tons of time by being able to do this. So this is something that came out with 2.8 at the Fabric version 4 level. I don't know if that's something that you're actively needing to go back and forth and share data between government entities, things like that. But if so, huge time saver. I know some folks have sort of a county and city collaboration going on. So sometimes it is nice and you just want to make sure that if one entity is making some updates for something, you want to make sure that those go into the other. Very easy way to make sure that happens. Easy to do comparisons that way too. All right. So another one of the items that from 2.8 that really I was super excited about. Like I said, I do a lot of reporting and charting and things like that just to give updates as to where certain projects are. So it's very nice that I can come in and let's say we do subdivisions. So I can click on subdivision and I can go to my subdivision. I can right click. I can go to data engineering from my context menu there, or I can go to my analysis toolbar or ribbon, I should say, at the top, and I have data engineering here as well. It's the same one, same data engineering. It's just a matter of how you get there. What it's going to do, depending on whichever feature class I have selected in my table of contents, and you can do this in catalog as well, doesn't matter. Either place is just fine. I happen to be in my map, so it's here. So whichever one I have selected in my table of contents is what opened down here with my data engineering. And be aware, you can still, move things around and change your screen real estate, so to speak. But what I'm going to do, let's say I want to see how many of the different plat types and such I've got going on. So I've got my plat type here. I just drag that into my, I say my working area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click calculate. Now you could do multiple fields here. I could bring in, the plat type, document names, created dates. I could bring in multiple fields here and then run calculate. I'm just going to do it on the one strictly for time here. So I can see that it already generated a chart preview. I can just right click and open that bar chart. Well, I can see most of my items are strictly subdivisions, but I like that it carries over my symbology. So my symbols are the same, they're outlined. So condos being a green outline, my condos here are also a green outline. So it carries those items over. And if I want to see how many items, so I can hover over this and I see that I have 18 condominium types. Well, that's great if I am just strictly in my data here. I am strictly looking at it. But that doesn't tell me if I'm trying to export this out and tell my supervisors, how many things are there. Well, and if I want to do that, I can go to my properties here. It opens up a new pane here and I can tell it to label my bars. Now I know that I can see that right there, how many are in of each type. And then I can choose to do the export. I can export this as a graphic or as a table and be able to recreate this in another area if I need to. But then I can just take this as a graphic, put it right into, let's say, a report that I need, or if I need to do a status report to a client, I can give them this and say, this is how many things have been developed or maintained or whatever it might be. So it's very easy to do this data engineering right here without having to go into another piece of software like Excel or Microsoft Access or whatever you're familiar with to be able to generate, okay, well, this is how many we did have, this is how many we have. So we've made, 10 different changes. Well, based on what? Strictly based on numbers, that could be good or bad. I mean, it just depends on how your numbers stack up. Do you do comparisons with, your parcel numbers or depending upon all of those types of things, but that's where we can do that right here in our software, right here in Pro. I can do all of that and still be able to generate very quickly some of these graphics or items, or if I just need to get a number to stick in an email, they just, how many subdivisions do I have? You have 347, wonderful. Very easy to see. Another way to think about that, something with a little bit more differences here, let's say encumbrances, I believe I have a little bit more items. Yeah, I can see I have a little bit more in my chart preview, and it doesn't have to be a bar chart. Line charts, histograms, box plots, whatever you want to do here. But I can run that and see what I have here. Again, my symbology carries through. And if I need to, I can again do my label the bars, and I can change all of this too. You can see I can sort by x-axis, y-axis, ascending, descending, custom info. Across the top here, you know, I can change what the series is, what the axes are. You know, you can change different formats if you have certain themes you like. Just general titles, things like that. So like this says my y-axis says count. This says encumbrance type. Well, maybe you don't want it to say encumbrance. Maybe to you, these are, you know, easement type. Okay, well, I can change that. So those types of things that I know I get sort of excited about those things simply because I use them all the time. Might not be anything you have to worry about, but just be aware that you can do these things because on occasion you may be asked for things. You don't have to be, you know, an Excel pro or an Access Whiz or anything like that. You can do it all right here within your data. Okay, so that takes care of items that I wanted to make sure to show you in 2.8. Questions on 2.8 items before we jump into stuff for 2.9? I'm going to go with.
No questions.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. All right. So we are about an hour in, and which is good. That means I'm probably still talking a little bit like an auctioneer. But I know I have lots and lots of info to show you. So if you need a break or anything, by all means, go to the bathroom, do what you got to do, get more caffeine, whatever it takes. I know everybody just came off lunch. So I will just sort of keep going, and remember that this is being recorded so that if you need the recording later, just have to ask the WLIA staff for that so you can get the recording. All right. Okay, so I'm going to quickly go back to the PowerPoint here just so that I can continue on just to show some of the items for 2.9 before we dive back into Pro and go look at those items. So when it comes to 2.9, there's actually quite a few enhancements that are what I would consider considerable. I don't know, a bad choice of words there, but there's a lot of enhancements that have really, I'll say, made me want to go to Fabric version 5. There's some things in here that just have turned the tide on how I want to see my data, work with my data, especially when it comes to some of the enhancements at the quality control level. We have some enhancements to the quality tab that I think are real game changers. And so that has really made me want to make sure that everything is upgraded as quickly as possible. So I'm going to show you some of those items, plus there's some schema updates, tool enhancements. We're going to get into things that have happened with the records feature class, with some of the line labeling. So we're still trying to get away from annotating the dimensions, right? The bearings and distances. So as Esri tries to get away from that, they're replacing that with labeling, right? Some enhanced labeling. And so some of the updates is that we do have more control over the labeling as far as if you want that bearing and distance to be inside a parcel, you know, basically if you want it on the left, right, or centered on a line. So we have a new domain and a new field for that. And then in the points feature class, we have a new attribute rule that is it's a constraint rule that allows us to make sure that the shape is fixed. So we have a couple of fields in there. There's already an is fixed field, and then there's an XY constraint field. So we have a couple of fields that we want to interact with, and then there's an attribute rule that is out of the box, so to speak, to make sure that that point, if you have certain values populated, does not move or only is allowed to move in certain situations. So there's some flexibility there. You know, do you want it to be allowed to move when you do a least square adjustment because it may need to change with some other new control you got? but you don't want it to move just in general. Like if I have a move command, I don't want it to move then. But if I'm doing an overall least square adjustment, yeah, then go ahead because that's what it's supposed to do. You have the ability to make some slight changes in the attributes to make those situations happen. So those are some of the schema enhancements we're going to talk about. As far as the quality tab items, we're going to be looking at some ways in which we can, well, we'll get into it a little bit here. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. I have a whole slide just on schema updates, but let me get all of those in here. So yeah, we have, like I said, the records feature class, the lines class, the points class, and we can actually we have an easier way to bring attribute rules in. Like I said, we don't have to know all the arcade functions and, you know, the if then statements and how all that is structured. Esri has done all the work for us, and we can simply import which rules we want, and we don't have to use all of them. But it's going to be a way that moving forward with different releases that come out, Esri is going to continue to add to this list. And then as we choose to use or not use, they've made it very easy to import all of the attribute rules they have sort of preset. All right, and then as far as some of the quality tab enhancements, there's some new tools. So there's a one for showing gaps and overlaps before you run topology. So it's showing just gaps and overlaps without having to see must have a record or some of those other topology rules you might have in there. Okay. So it's a very quick way to, let's say, view if I'm going into a specific area to do an update, to do a split, a merge, whatever it might be. I would want to run this very quickly. It takes seconds to see it. Do I have any gaps, overlaps? Yes, no, great. Go ahead and do what I'm going to do. Run it again. Did I create any problems? Yes, no, great. Now you can move on. Same thing with the evaluation group. There's some new tools there that will show, do I have any of those very short segments? A lot of times we can fix that with maybe a merge points tool or something like that. So there's the addition of some new tools here that are really going to help us out for spatially maintaining our data, keeping it accurate, and finding those problems before I get to say, you know, maybe a weekly topology check. And now I have to go back to all these little spots where I probably should have taken care of that while I was there. So it's nice to be able to see those things, and I can go focus and just go find those little things and fix them very quickly. If you have time to, let's say, have a focused project to just work on gaps and overlaps. Friday afternoons, I'm going to strictly work on that. You know, so for 3.5 hours this afternoon, I'm just going to take time, go find them. I'm going to run that tool and zoom around and just see if I can fix some of these little gaps and overlaps. Wonderful. It just improves your data. It makes things going forward that much better. And then as you're working through a particular split or a particular area, maybe a new subdivision, you can just run these tools to make sure that you're not starting out with errors. And then as you add subdivisions or splits or whatnot, you're also not adding any errors. So it's a nice way to very quickly take a qualitative look at your data each and every time you're going in and doing an edit. Okay. So we're going to talk about and show some of those enhancements to the quality tab. Really, those are some of the items right there that make editing in the Pro fabric so much easier and so much faster and a lot more user-friendly than trying to do this in the ArcMap fabric. Okay. These enhancements are really game changers for me. All right, some of the additional tool enhancements, we have enhancements to how we import parcel fabric points. So let's think if you were to, let's say your county surveyor has gone out and maybe you're working on a remonumentation project and they come back and give you a listing of items. You're able to bring those in. Well, we've always been able to import control points. Great. But we have improvements on the tool now that will allow you to, let's say, overwrite if it's the same point, but now you have better, and within a certain tolerance, let's say within, you know, 1/10 of a foot or something like that, you're going to tell it that tolerance. If it's the same point, overwrite it with the right attributes and move data to it or not, and that's fine. Maybe you only want to move it when you're doing a least squares. Great. But you have the flexibility to work with your data on an import now. So if it's named the same, but you want to update attributes, the XY values, things like that, you can do that. And you define what the tolerance is to where it is the same point or going to be considered the same point or not. So a lot of improvements there with the way that you can handle new control points coming in. Or let's say if you're working with a state agency or your BLM data or something like that, if you're trying to bring in a whole host of points, you're able to work with that and maybe bring it in a different way or something like that. So some serious improvements have happened there. Now, if you were to just get a new point, yeah, I probably wouldn't even use the tool. But if I'm going to get a whole series of points, I would definitely be using my import parcel fabric points tool to do that. 1 point here and there, no, I wouldn't do it. The traverse tool, we've already talked about some of those as far as enhancements go, but a couple of those items I showed may have been 2.9. I don't think I did, but it's very possible. Mostly what happened at 2.9 in the traverse tool is the ability to maintain tangency. So what I mean by that, when it comes to the traverse tool, we know that I can enter lines. I have a series of lines. And then if I realized my first line, let's say I accidentally mistyped it. It was supposed to be 45 degrees, 52 minutes. And I put in 25, I reversed them. Anything that I have like a tangent curve after that is going to be tangent to the wrong segment if I go back and correct that. Well, in 2.9, not so. If I have indicated, using the asterisk, I can't say that word, using the little star, right? The shift 8, using that one. If I use that command to show that this is a tangent curve to the previous segment, and now if I go correct that previous segment, it will maintain tangency through anything that has been affected by that. So if I have a straight segment and then tangent curve, tangent curve, tangent curve, and then onto another straight segment, and I go fix that first one, all three of those curves will now be updated to maintain their tangency to that first line segment. Yay! Hopefully you've not had too many mistakes where you've had to do that before, but that is one of the enhancements to the traverse tool in 2.9 is that maintaining tangency when I go back and correct the segment that those curves are trying to be tangent to. So all of that is there. All right, and then as far as some miscellaneous items, there's some miscellaneous updates as far as scripting updates. There's things like that that I'm probably not going to get into, but just be aware that if you are a scripter behind the scenes, there have been some improvements as far as the language goes behind the scripting updates. And then when we come back, I'll also talk about some of the near-term 3.0 updates that are going to be coming out. And then is anybody here still, are you in 2.6 with Fabric version 3? Nobody, okay. I just know that there's a patch coming out, especially for 2.6 Parcel Fabric stuff. And that patch is coming out March 17th. Probably a date that will bring out several patches, but I know for sure there have been some bugs there with some of the tools that I know that we've been involved in and others have posted as well. So that is definitely going to be coming out. So if you're not in 2.6, you probably don't even know about the issues. But if you are still at 2.6 with the Fabric version 3, which is Enterprise 10.8.1, you may be experiencing some of these tool issues. But if not, then don't worry about it. But let's get into Pro and let's go dive into some of these things and actually go look at what these enhancements truly are. All right, so I'm going to close this data engineering piece here and some of these attribute rules here. Okay, nope. Okay, so a few of the items that we mentioned for 2.9, just looking at time here. Okay, yay, we are good. Just so for my own reference, this is to 4:30, right? Am I getting yes to 4:30? Okay, great. I couldn't remember if you're 4 or 4:30. Okay, all right, fantastic. Okay, so items that are in 2.9. This is super exciting, and I know I get a little overly excited about some things, and like I said, you can tell me to slow down, speed up, whatever we need to do. One thing I forgot to point out when it came to the data engineering, you may have noticed in my table of contents that anytime that I create a chart, that chart comes into my table of contents. So I can refer to it at any point in time. I am just going to remove those from my table of contents at this moment. Okay. We are going to see other things that are going to pop in here in my table of contents. So I'm just shrinking things down, excuse me, for the moment so that we can see other things come in as they need to. All right, so one of the things I wanted to point out as far as schema updates that have happened is the records fields. So if I were to look at my records and go to my data design fields, there's an extra field now. So we have had in the past, you know, we want to know that it was created, you know, when the record was created. So we have a created record, or actually, which in this case is just the name. So that would be the name of the record, whether you use, let's say, a deed number or some sort of unique identifier that tells you what instrument that particular feature was built from. Deed number, survey number, CSM, whatever it may be. It has to be unique. The name has to be unique, but whatever it is that you call it, that's the name of it. So when I see a tax parcel or something and I see that the created by record is populated, it gets populated with the global ID, not with the name. But the fact that there is a record and it's populated as created by record with a global ID means I know that there's something there. I can go find it. Okay. What they have done is there is a parcel count. Now this came out earlier, the parcel count field. It's automatically generated, automatically populated. We don't have to do anything with it. But what happens is in this parcel count field, anytime that, so the workflow is that you create a record, deed 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go ahead and create parcels based on that particular deed. Could be a split, could be a new subdivision, whatever it is. I'm going to create features. And let's say that that particular document creates 5 parcels. Wonderful. What happens when I retire? You know, I get a new deed. Now it retires 3 of those parcels and I've got 2 left, and I have to do a line adjustment because these 2 parcels aren't going to stay the same shape. I'm going to change them slightly. Okay, so that's a new deed, a new record. Well, what's going to happen now, that new record is going to overwrite part of that original record. So what's going to happen though is now I can see a retired parcel count. How many of those parcels are now retired? So I can have a full parcel count and a retired count. It's now keeping track of what happens, not just how many features did it create, but how many features did it retire. So we can really, we're getting a really good lineage of our parcel data the more that we do our updates. So as long as we're using the records and we're doing these pieces that take mere seconds, creating a record takes seconds. Just what's the deed number, populate whatever information you want. Everybody might be different as far as what attributes you want in your records, but really the rest of it is all being done automatically. So the date that you put in as far as deed 1, 2, 3, that was recorded on this date. So that's the date that it was active. Anything that I retire because of that new deed is being retired as of that date. So we're keeping not only just sort of a spatial, here's what it was, now this is coming in and retiring that one, you know, so it's not just a spatial overlap type of thing. Now we're adding that time component to it as well. So based on certain dates, I can follow the lineage of parcels and how things are being modified through time. So the more that you do in the fabric and using the tools that are here, you're really not only keeping track of your data spatially, and we're trying to keep up with the accuracy using some of these quality tools, but we're keeping track of all that lineage spatially and temporally, right? Time-wise. We're keeping track of all of those things. So really what's coming out, and I don't think it's on the near term, but it's on the midterm list for Esri, is that it's going to actually have a true lineage tool. Okay. There are currently parcel or pin lineage tools in the Esri marketplace, which are right now mostly based on spatial components because we didn't always have the time component. So it was just, here's what it was, and this came in afterwards. And there might be some system end and start dates or legal end and start dates coming from the ArcMap fabric. But now we're able to keep track of the recorded date, and when it retires something, it gets retired as of that same recorded date. So there's no lapse in time. The time frame is exactly the same. So as one is retired, the other one is created, and there is no gap in time. So we're able to really follow that lineage through time. And there's that way we're able to see this is what it is now. This was the last one, and before that it was this, and before that it was this. So the longer we go with the parcel fabric and the tools that are here, the more of that lineage component you're really going to be able to have. I know for a lot of folks, having the lineage and the archiving and the history, that was a big component to moving to a parcel fabric versus just staying, let's say, in a standard geodatabase or shapefiles or things like that. Was to be able to have that auto history, auto archive, lineage type of component to it. So knowing that Esri is really focusing on that component and maintaining that archival record of what's happening to our data, that's very encouraging to me that we're going to have, it might not be fully there yet, but with all of our ideas, they're really listening to what would be useful for us. So these things have been added strictly out of the ideas of us, right? Out of everyone here. If you're submitting ideas to Esri, they're listening. They really are, and they're putting things into the system. So yay, it's great. They're doing what we've always been told they were doing, but maybe they weren't, and now they are. So yeah, so these are some of the things that are being added. Other things that are in here, I have not added anything to this schema. So you can see by, I'll say out of the box, the name field, like I said, it does have to be unique. However you decide to do your naming. Some people use prefixes to know if it was, a CSM, a record of survey, a subdivision, a deed, WD, warranty deed, quitclaim deed, whatever your system is. Just be aware, remember that name has to be unique. The record type is strictly a field that Esri has out of the box, but you don't have to use it. Having the domain of a record type, if you want that is a domain you need to create. That domain does not come out of the box, but it is, I would say that's definitely something I would use a domain for. What most folks use a record type domain would be if it's something, like I said, I have to do some charting and reporting and things. Was it a merge? Was it a subdivision? Was it a split? Was it a boundary line adjustment? Was it a right-of-way taking? Things like that. Those are the types of things I generally put in that domain. So when I do year-end reports, how many subdivisions did we do this year? When did we do them? Did we do most of our stuff right there at the end before we closed them off? Did we do most of our stuff in July? That way come now next year, I can plan. If we have another project we need to do, and I can see that we were swamped, let's say in July, okay, don't plan July for something else. Let's plan, September would be a better month, or April, do something else at a different time so that I can make sure that I keep all of my staff ready to go in July for what I'm going to guess might be another onslaught of subdivisions or splits or whatever it might be. I mean, granted, the housing market was crazy this last spring, or a year ago. So a lot of splits came in where we were dividing up land for people to build different things. Those things that were mostly just sales didn't affect me. Name changes and stuff I don't have to worry about, but I do like to be able to see, what, how many of what types of things we did have. So if that's something you want, the record type field is out of the box, but the domain is not. So you're going to want to build that. Other items here are all out of the box. The recorded date, simply a date field. COGO accuracy, that is, I'll say, a legacy field. That one, the original accuracy field coming from an ArcMap fabric is not the same. It does now split into multiples. We actually can have accuracy between our bearings and our distances separate. So we can put more emphasis and accuracy on, let's say, the direction versus the distance, vice versa, whatever have you, whatever makes most sense for your data. But being able to put in an accuracy here is still an item that is viable, so that if you know its accuracy at the beginning, you can enter that directly. Do you have to? No, but if you're going to do least squares, you're going to have to populate that at some time. Now you can populate that information when you're ready to do a least squares just for the area you're going to do the least square adjustment to. But if you know that, hey, this is very accurate, this is top notch, I know the surveyor, he does everything right, you can go ahead and give it a really good accuracy here, and that'll carry throughout your edits. If you don't know that information right off the bat, you don't have to populate it. It's not going to do anything right now, but down the road, if you are going to use least square adjustments, then you're going to want to populate that at some point. But you can do that a minute before you run your least square adjustment. It doesn't have to be done well ahead of time. It's just relative to the other features in that area. So those are things that you can do at a different time. The parcel count and the retired parcel count are two fields that will auto-populate. They're nothing that you need to populate. Okay. So when it comes to a lot of these things, you can just turn them off for visibility. That if you don't want to see them right away, you don't have to, especially those things that auto-populate. But you can leave them on if you choose to. So that is definitely something new that came out with 2.9 was the retired parcel count. The others have been there, but I don't recall how many versions ago. Parcel count was there at least at 2.8. I don't recall if that was there at 2.7 or not. Okay. All right, so that is a schema change that is out of the box, not something that we added or anything. Another schema change that I want to show you for sure deals with the lines. And again, this is where it comes to being able to, let me find a better spot here. There we go. If you're going to run distances, your bearings and distances, and have those labeled versus having annotation, you're going to want to have this particular piece employed. So I'm going to go over here. I'm just going to get back over to my records tab, and I'm just going to select these lines and update the COGO so that we can see them. And I'm just going to go to my modify and update COGO on my line work so that it will label. All right, so those have been updated. I'm sure I'm not zoomed in enough to see them. We better be getting there. There we go. Okay. All right. So one nice thing about this, I can see for the most part, they're not bad. They're the smaller line segments are inside the parcel. Everything seems to be on the correct side. Of course it did. Of course it all looks good, but let's assume that this bottom one here should actually, I want it to be inside that particular parcel. I realize that they're the same and it's the same shared, but I'm going to change which side that goes to. Okay. So we have the option now to change how this looks. Right now you can see that both the bearing and the distance together are on one side of the line or the other. Nothing is straddling the line. Okay. If that is an option that you liked because it used to be that way, we now have that back. Okay, that we can center that instead of being all on the left, all on the right. Now we can actually center that as well. So if I go look at my design here, data design of my fields on my line feature class, excuse me, we can see down here at the bottom, nope, not all the way to the bottom. Okay, label position. That particular field is new. So the label, it's a label position field. It does have a domain. The domain is shipped and it's automatically applied. It's not something you have to do, but that domain allows us to have right, left, center. So if I go look at my domain here, and let's just go quick, do this and go look at the domains. I'll show you all the domains here. Okay, so there's quite a few, some that are specific to this particular client, but label position is one here, and you can see that is right, left, centered. Pretty easy. Just so you're aware that record type domain, this is one that I created. This is not something that ships, but these are the types of items that I put in there because for this particular, well, this is demo data now, but these were the items that I needed to be able to keep track of and be able to generate reports for. Basically was what kinds of things are we doing in a particular year or 6-month period, merges, splits, new subs, corrections, am I just doing some housekeeping items, right of ways, vacation, right of way, vacating right of way, that kind of thing. So yeah, so there's getting to be a few more fields in there. Sorry, a few more domains coming in, but all good items and all things that can be used multiple times. So this might be a label position domain, but if it's just left, right, center, you can use it for anything that would require that. I was also going to point out that where in the records we had accuracy, COGO accuracy was one field. Here we actually have showing you that there are two. So there's direction accuracy and there's distance accuracy. And we can, this would be within a certain distance, I'm sorry, within a certain, this is direction accuracy, so it's within 30 seconds. So we have degree, minute, second, this is within 30 seconds. And then this would be my distance, so approximately half a foot. So really, it's really based more metric, but you can change that accuracy. Okay. So yeah, so those are the items that kind of go with the COGO accuracy, but then we also have the label position, which is new. And you can see there's that COGO accuracy field, which also relates to our record, but then that would be updated into each of these fields, or you can do those one by one. So when it comes to running a least square adjustment, you can choose to change the record. So anything that's established by that record, you can change it at an individual parcel level or an individual line level. So if there's a particular line that is extremely important and has to be exactly that, it's highly accurate, and maybe things that go off of that line maybe don't have the same level of accuracy, but that one line does, you can make that accuracy much better than the rest of the things around it or anything else in that particular record by simply going into the individual feature itself, that individual line segment, and changing that accuracy. So you can do accuracy at the record level, the individual polygon, or the individual line level. All right. But at this point, I was just pointing out the label position. That is something that is new. It is a new field. It is a new domain. Again, they all come together. It is already applied to line work if you were to do an upgrade from a previous Fabric version, or if you're doing a new migration into Fabric version 5, this will already be there. It'll be preset. You can see the default value is to the right. You can change that. That is totally up to you. It's just out of the box by default. That's what it comes in as, but that is changeable. Okay. All right. So what happens then if I were to select a line, I can go into my attributes and I will see that I will have, expand that a little bit. I'm going to find that particular field, label position. Right now it is on the right side by default. It is not specified here, but it came in on the right because that was default. But I can tell it to go left, and you can tell it to auto apply, or I can click apply. And as it goes left, now it's on the, I'll say it's on the north side, just because I can see the direction of the line, which for me is going from my left to right. Or I can tell it to do centered. And as it centers, it will put the bearing, let me apply that. The bearing on one side and the distance on the other. So it will center that. It's still centered along the line, But when we say centered as far as label position, it is centering the label, which is bearing and distance or radius, arc length, whatever you may have there. Centered is putting it on half and half on either side of the line. Otherwise, it's all left or all right. But even when I told it to go left or right, it's not going to the left or right, which is the start or the end of the line. It's going to the left or right side of the line as it's drawn. Okay. So I can see all of these lines are, for me, moving from my left to my right. So anytime that it says right, it will be to the bottom, so to the south side of those lines, and left would be to the north side of those lines. But I could select those lines and make them all 4 of them going to the center and apply that. And they're all centered. So you can do anything you need to. So if you're thinking about if you need to do mapping, some assessor maps, or you're doing a map series, if there are things like, you know, where you used to be able to use ANO to specifically place things, you know, north of the line, south of the line, within the parcel, outside the parcel, whatever made sense, you can do a lot of that now with the label position being left, right, or centered. So you can, if that was a concern, getting away from ANO and going into labeling, that might be a help. And now you don't have to worry about annotating or moving things around in your annotation. I find the labeling of the dimensions to be a huge improvement over what we had in the past, and being able to especially assign specifically left, right, centered. I have more flexibility to make that, to make those map series documents more precise, or at least more in conformance with the way that I think they should be. Maybe they fit conformance measures or standards previously being all left or all right, but being able to center some things where I know they're exactly the same shared segment and be able to indicate that by centering them. I feel more comfortable that I'm expressing that through a more of a printed map or a static, maybe PDF or something to that effect. Where something where somebody can't click on the line and be able to say, oh, okay, so that's the whole thing, got it. But if they're looking at something static, it's a PDF out on the website, it's a map series that they're seeing, printed book, I tend to like being able to center the things, or like along the edges here, being able to keep it all inside my parcel so that they know it's only for that segment, especially like when we have backlot type of issues. So I have 2 smaller segments here and then a differing segment out here. I'm keeping those items into their separate parcels so that there's no confusion. Things aren't coming in flipped to the wrong side. If they are, I can make those corrections very easily just by telling it how to flip, right? Go to the left, go to the right, center it, whatever makes sense. So the label position there has been very nice, very easy. I can change the default if I don't like it, I'm always coming in on the right. But if I know what it is, it's always coming in as, I can plan for that too. So instead of drawing it from left to right, maybe I draw it right to left. You know, I draw it to the southeast instead of the northwest, whatever makes sense. Okay, so it's just another option that we have that can very quickly help us to get rid of the extra work of I'll say fiddling with annotation, because I do find that when we have annotation, that tends to take 40 to 50% of the time fiddling with the ANO versus moving on to the next split or the next item, whatever that is. If I don't have to worry about that and I can just take a quick look and be like, oh, nope, that one has to flip, that one has to flip, whatever, I can make those changes very quickly and move on. I'm not replacing ANO or moving ANO. I find that to be a huge time saver. And then when I go to make splits or changes or things like that down the road, that will automatically update with me. And I can, as I split a line, split a parcel, it will become 2, it will update, and I can again, quickly just make sure that they are aligned properly and move on, rather than having to now create new annotation and verify things like that. So yeah, so if annotation for dimensions, not all ANO, because there are definitely, I still think there's a purpose to some ANO. It's not that I'm trying to get rid of all ANO, but if I can save time on my dimension ANO by letting the label function happen, I'm willing to do that. If that is a huge time saver and I can still get the same result for my map series, for printed map, for PDFs, whatever I'm trying to do, if I can get the same result and it looks good and it meets all of the criteria for our county standard, I'm happy. Then I don't have to fiddle with annotation as much. So huge improvement there, at least in my opinion, that was a big improvement. Hopefully that fits some of your needs as well. Okay, one more thing on schema stuff. Let's go look at some of our points. So if I turn my points on, we're going to see just right here in this area, I just have some regular parcel points. Nothing significant, but if I zoom out, I will find some control. So I've got some control points happening here. If I go into my points, I'm going to go into the data design again. And in this case, I'm going to go into my attribute rules. So I'm going to show you here. We have attribute rule. This particular preserve has been there for a little bit. That may have come with version 4, or it may even have been before that. I'm not positive when that first one came in. But what we have now is we have another one in the constraint here, which says the shape is fixed. So between the two, if I'm looking at my calculation to say that it's preserved, what this particular attribute rule does, this is shipped with the fabric. If I have a parcel that I delete, okay, what it's going to say, this particular rule says preserve the point even when that parcel is deleted, because maybe you're going to come back and still use that particular just normal point, not a control point, just a regular point. So that's what this is, that if the entire feature, the polygon, the lines, if the whole thing is deleted, go ahead and delete the point. But if I'm just deleting like the polygon and I'm keeping the lines because I'm going to do something else, keep the points because I'm going to need those again. So there's a definition going on behind the scenes with that one. So I'm not too concerned about that one. That's more of a behind the scenes thing that I don't have to worry about so much. But the constraint rule here of shape is fixed, this is very nice because I was trying to come up with my own rules to preserve particular points. Excuse me. So what happens here with shape is fixed is that we have two ways in which we can interact with points as far as keeping them fixed or how we can control their behavior. So I'm going to show you the fields. So in the fields here of my points, we have a couple of fields. One is fixed, and that is a yes/no field as far as the domain goes. Is it a fixed shape as far as this point goes or not? And then we also have the adjustment constraint field. And this one has a couple of items. Nope, that's the fields. Sorry. There we go. It's either XY is free and Z is constrained, but so it can still move around in the XY plane, but not necessarily up and down. Or we can do the XYZ is constrained. And if we have XYZ constrained, basically we're telling it it's a control point. It can't move, right? Its X, its Y, and its Z values are all constrained, keeping it as a control point. If it's free, if it's XY free, then it's a regular parcel point. So if I'm stretching, if I'm moving, if I'm doing things, yes, I'm doing those things on purpose. And those points, they're just regular vertex points. Those things can move because that's my intention, is to have those move. But the is fixed, we've always had the option for a yes, no, this is a fixed point. But now those are going to have slightly different behavior values to them. Okay, so fixed shape, yes, means any editing process, it's fixed, it cannot move. Okay, the adjustment constraint, XY free or XYZ constrained, whatever you choose there, that field, adjustment constraint, and they changed it slightly to adjustment constraint because that is only considered when you're running a least square adjustment. Okay, so it's not that these two fields seem like they're trying to do the same thing. Is fixed is for everyday use, right? All of your edits, anything like that, adjustment constraint is specific to least square adjustment changes. Okay, so if you have fixed point or is fixed, if the is fixed field is no, and the adjustment constraint is XYZ constrained, the point can be moved when editing, but not for a least square adjustment edit for that type of adjustment. So you're really giving yourself the day-to-day ability to move a particular vertex, a particular point, because you're doing that specifically. But if you're going to run a least square adjustment and you have XYZ constrained for your adjustment constraint, that means that that point cannot move when it comes to a least square adjustment. Okay. So you can define my day-to-day activities versus my least square adjustment activity point behavior in different ways by utilizing those two fields. Okay. So, and then along with just how you're doing those types of things, then we have the attribute rule here, which is really enforcing the, if it's fixed, it is fixed means no movement at all, ever, no matter what edit you're doing. So if is fixed is yes, even if you're specifically trying to move that point, it won't move. But if you give it the option to move for you, but you don't want it for the least squares, then you change the adjustment constraint and not your is fixed field. So it might be a little bit of a change as far as what you may have seen before by having the is fixed field, maybe before the adjustment constraint field came into play. You might just have to slightly modify your train of thought on that particular piece. And that's really, it comes down to if you're using least square adjustments. If you're not using least square adjustments, then you don't need to worry about the adjustment constraint field, then you just need to worry about your is fixed field. Okay. So a lot of details, but it really gives you the flexibility in how you work with your data and how you assume your data to behave. It's all in the behavior, right? That's what Fabric is. It's the behavior. We're trying to modify and make things consistent amongst features and be able to be flexible with some features and very tight with other features. So points is one of those particular features that from the ArcMap Fabric, where control was a completely separate Fabric class from all the other points. Now they're all in one class just called points here. So now we're trying to indicate which points are movable, which points are not movable. We're trying to be flexible and yet tight at the same time. So we're applying different ways and methods to make sure all of that comes together. All right, moving on. Importing attribute rules, since we're talking attribute rules. Sort of it's a schema item, but this can be used on multiple classes. This isn't just for points. It's not just for tax parcels. This is for anything. But the way in which we can import rules, I don't have to know Arcade in and out and be able to write all of these expressions, because some of them, that one's not too long, but some of them can go on and on. Okay. But if I am trying to create some expressions and I know somebody out there has done it, or somebody else probably has some really good ideas, well, let's go see what Esri already has on the docket. Okay, so what other attribute rules might there be for points? I mean, I'm in with my points right now. I can go to import rules, and they now have this little handy dandy piece right here for Parcel Fabric. So if I click on that, oh, I have edits, but anyway, I can go through and did they add any to calculation? No. Constraint? No. Validation. See, it's usually in validation that these are 4 new rules. I could use them or not. So what did they add? Must be within my XY extent. Always a good one, right? We don't need to be putting points on the moon, right? Typically what I find for that one is that folks may not understand that there's a difference between getting data as XY versus northing easting. Okay. Northing is not X. Easting is not Y. They're backwards, right? So if you're used to getting coordinates as XY and somebody gives you something as northing easting, northing is Y, easting is X. So you have to think about those backwards. So if people enter them backwards, you might be thinking you're putting something in your county in Wisconsin, and yet it's showing up in Utah. Okay, because your coordinates are backwards. So being able to have a validation rule that says my corner, my point must be within the XY extent of my county. Yay, right? You can't accidentally put a point out in Utah or anywhere else for that matter. Or if you have a Z value, you're not putting it out on the moon somewhere. We saw that. I know anybody who watched maybe one of the Esri was it the special interest group from the virtual UC, whoever they were working with had points on the moon. Yeah, we don't need to extend our county's extent that far. But so that's always a good rule, a good validation rule. So any new points that I add must be within the XY extent of my county, or Z extent. If you have a Z extent that you can't go higher than a certain value, that's always good. You might want to, especially if you're looking to do things in 3D, if you're using an elevation type of thing, you might want to put a cap on that so that you're only giving yourself maybe air rights or visual rights or whatever your rights are that high, a specific height. Sorry, my camera with my hands keeps going in and out, but so I think that at least this first rule is always a good one. Z value, if you're using it, is a good one, but especially if you're going to more of a 3D type of thing, you may want to change that. And you can see that these things are preset, you know, no more than 1,000 feet going down. So if you're doing, like I said, 3D, that would give you a lot of floors underground if you're doing that. But it also gives you a good depth for mineral rights. But 1,000 feet down might be, that's pushing it, that's a lot. And then this has 10,000 feet going up, so your maximum allowed. So you may want to modify those max and mins there, but you have the ability to do that. But look at that, I don't have to know all that arcade to make sure that I have all of that figured out. I can go in here, and now that it's there, boom, I just make a few changes, modify my mins and maxes, and then I'm done. Okay. They change the field so that if I have changed the name of, maybe it's not points to me, maybe I've called it, I don't know, point features. I've changed the name of the feature class. It's going to know that. It's going to figure that out. It's going to change those field names for me or table names for me. It's going to see that and make those changes for me. If not, if it's too much of a difference and it doesn't know, it will come up in a different color. I believe it comes up in magenta and shows up and says, hey, we got a problem here. And before you can save that, you have to go correct it. I can say that I haven't had one of those happen. It was demonstrated, but I haven't had it happen to me. I guess I haven't been crazy with my naming conventions, so I haven't had that happen. You know, XY must match within a certain distance of that particular feature. And if I'm going to change things, you know, I look at this expression going, yep, there's no way I would have come up with all that. I would have been Googling, trying to find somebody else who's done what I'm trying to do. I would have been reaching out to my IT department. I would have been reaching out to Esri. I mean, I would have been reaching out wherever to see if I could get this to happen. And poof, look at that. It's already there. I didn't have to come up with it. I didn't have to go find it. Esri already has it here. I don't have to use it, but it's available, right? And the same thing, so your X, Y, and your Z here. And this is just for points. This is just for points. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to actually discard all my edits right now that are out in my map. And then that way right now I could save these. And if I decided, no, I'd really just want that first one and I don't want that one, or that one, then I can say delete those three or well, yeah, whichever one I have highlighted. And I can just keep that one and now I can hit save. And now if I make a new point, it will verify that it's within my XY extent. Now I can change my XY extents here as well, but it's going to go read what I have in my particular extent for this particular project. Excuse me. Oh, for heaven's sake. I don't have that many points. But you can see it also locks my table of contents when it's doing these changes. Everybody still awake? Good, good, all right. All right, well, I didn't mean for it to take quite that long to apply the change. I won't apply any more changes as we go. All right, I saw something change. All right, yay. Now, if we go back and add a point and run our validate, it will tell us if I have a point that is or is not in the right location. And the same things apply to whichever types of features I have. So if I go into my tax parcel, which is, Polygon, I can go look at my attribute layers there as well. I'm sorry, my attribute rules, my attribute layers. And I can do the same thing. I can say import rules, click on that parcel fabric item. And like I said, most of these are going to come into my validation. So anything that's in green is what just came in. So again, I don't have to determine if, I don't have to go create all of these, but I can use them. Must be larger than a specified area. And this is saying in here, it must be larger than a square foot. So that's the minimum shape area allowed. And right now, it's in square meters. So it's setting 1 square meter, but I can change that in my area units right here. So we can make sure that those are there. I can say that it has to be smaller than a certain square footage that, so if there's anything that shouldn't be huge, which is really a good idea. So you don't have those spider web of right-of-ways. Because if you have a single, I know it used to be really cool to have like one spider web of a right-of-way because that's really cool looking. Yeah, not anymore. Not anymore. When it comes to the fabric, if I'm working on a parcel that's adjacent to that particular feature, that spider web feature, and I'm trying to split or do something, it has to consider that entire spider web to think about that. So break those up. Break up all of those spider webs. They don't need to be that big. Okay, so being able to have a rule that said it must be smaller than prevents having giant spider webs, or maybe you've got a really big lake. If you're up on Lake Superior or something like that, you're in Door County or something, you've got the huge lake going around. You might want to break that up so that if you want to have that water so you can see it as part of your edge, or you've got just a really big lake, you might want to break that up into smaller chunks, just because, again, if I'm trying to do a new subdivision along the lake shore, it has to consider that lake. And if that lake has thousands and thousands of points, it could negatively impact your productivity. And we don't want that to happen. Okay. So being able to have something that says it must be smaller than a certain acreage or square footage, something like that, could be handy. I can say that it probably doesn't impact, I'll say maybe 90% of clients, but those, especially in our neck of the woods, right? Wisconsin, Minnesota, we've got a lot of water, a lot of lakes, big lakes that could impact our productivity around those areas. So that's a rule that could be useful. It's certainly useful to know that it's available. And then of course, there's things like current parcels must not overlap each other. Wonderful, except how it depends on how you are portraying some of your data. Think condos. You could, with attribute rules, actually prevent yourself from having overlapping or stacked features. Well, it might seem like a good idea, so I don't have edges slightly overlapped, things like that. But if I'm truly trying to represent condos as stacked features, that might not be a good rule, because they are active parcels. They're all active. They're all current parcels. And this could actually prevent me from being able to do that, from being able to represent things the way that I'm used to. So it's definitely not a rule that you have to have, but it's a way in which you could enforce that. If, let's say, you're not representing it that way, you're always representing condos as a related table. Wonderful. Well, so you could use this rule so any current parcels cannot overlap. So any of your tax parcels don't overlap each other. That way you always make sure that you're using the related table or some other method to represent condos or some sort of vertical parcel arrangement. So some of these rules are great, and I'm not going to go through each and every one. What I wanted to show you, though, it was that the ability to bring those in is as simple as using the import rules, parcel fabric, and then all of these items are brought in at one time. Then you can choose which rules to use or not use. Okay. Again, I don't have to know the language. I don't have to know the details. All of that stuff is pre-populated. I just need to review it to make sure that it makes sense, especially those things with distances or larger than, smaller than, things that have tolerance levels. You want to make sure to populate that with what makes sense for you. So yeah, so oh, I like this one. The areas must match within. So if it's a shape area, stated area, you can make sure that they're not crazy. You know, that my deeded area says that it's supposed to be half an acre, and yet somehow it's showing up as 5 acres. Why is it 10 times different? So you can set different ratios to see which, what's the maximum allowed difference ratio. And you can have those things pop up so you can run comparisons. It's kind of runs those comparisons for you right out of the gate. Now, some of these things, if you don't want them to be attribute rules, could also be set up instead as a data reviewer check, something that you can run down the road. You don't have to have it every time you do a validate, run one of these rules, but maybe it's something you want to do periodically. Then you can set that up as a data reviewer check, which is also available in Pro. You can run data reviewer. For data reviewer checks, though, you do still have to have a data reviewer extension license. It's not always just built in. Attribute rules, that's built into Pro. You can use that if you have a Pro license, you can use attribute rules. But if you choose to try to use data reviewer checks, you do still have to have that data reviewer extension license. So kind of keep that in mind. If there's some things that could be checks, but you don't have a data reviewer license, then you're going to want to figure out how to do it as an attribute rule or topology rule or some other type of QC item. Okay, so I'm just going to remove these, but I want you to see that those were available. And then this one, the must have a record, is strictly an option now. Yay, we can remove it. I will say that I never remove. Okay, if it's something that I have just migrated data and it is a nuisance at this time, but I'm working to assign my parcels to records and I know I'm going to focus on that. So I want to bring this rule back at a point in time. I have two options. One, I can just disable it and leave it here, so it's not going to run. It's just that I can disable my rule temporarily, and then later when I'm happy, I can come back and enable it. Or I can delete this rule, and then when I do the import rules, it will come back, okay, because it is part of that list. So I can get rid of it temporarily until I'm ready to have that come back, and then I can run some checks on must have a record. So what used to be a non-changeable, non-configurable, you had no choice about the matter rule is now completely configurable and changeable however you want that to happen. Okay. So we can get rid of that or do whatever you'd like to do with that particular rule. Yeah, so the ability to bring in all these rules without me having to think about them is fantastic. Makes me more efficient, especially when I'm working with clients to upgrade data. And now we can really look at some of these rules that are available to apply, what's going to make sense, what isn't going to make sense. And it really keeps your data accurate and clean and makes you aware of potential mistakes that you might be making when you're doing it, so that you fix those habits, you break those habits quickly and then move on. So then you're not doing the same habits down the road. Instead of having 2 or 3 errors to fix up, now you have 200 or 300 errors to fix, and then nobody likes to do that. All right. So if we can find those problems, correct those problems, and turn those into good habits down the road, you're just saving yourself time and energy as things move along. So anyway, so importing those rules is a huge benefit. Again, things I don't have to be, I'll say highly in tune with. I don't have to be a programmer. I can just use them as they are. All right, so that is just part of our attribute rules. You can get to that anytime just by selecting any feature class, point line poly. You just right click to your data design and go into your attribute rules. That brings you into this location, import rules, parcel fabric, and it'll give you the whole list. Now, it could be giving you calculation, constraint, or validation rules. Most of them will be validation rules. You might have the occasional 1 or 2 under calculation or constraint. but the majority will be validation rules, which means upon running a validate, right? Validate extent, validate all, whatever's in your, when you run your modify, you have validate all, validate extent, or validate specified extent, where you draw a box over specifically what you want to validate. That's when the validate rules will be run. Okay. So you'll be able to have that in there. Okay, let's close some of these items here that I've got going on. All right, so that was all the things in the schema. So moving on to things in the quality tab, this is going to be beautiful. Okay, going into still on our parcel, or more of our parcel fabric, because you're not going to have this parcels ribbon unless you have parcel fabric in your table of contents. So if you have in your table of contents, you have parcel fabric, you will then get records and quality. Now in 2.6 with the fabric version 3, you did not have separate records and quality tabs or ribbons. So when it came to fabric version 4 is when that first was introduced. And of course, now we're in fabric version 5 here. This is available. So on my records ribbon, really nothing has changed. There's nothing new. If you haven't seen the parcel features item before, let me show you what that does. Where's my selection here? And okay, I just want to make sure I can select features. Oh, data engineering, I must have something going on there. I didn't mean to. What all do I have going on here? Oh, get rid of my charts. Okay, some it's not allowing me to select my tax parcel. What did I do wrong? What can I select? I can select a point, or I'm sorry, a line. That would be a line. I don't know what's going on with this. Let's see. I don't have any other data engineering items open at this point. Thought I removed everything. Did I not remove everything? Well, okay. Well, even if I have a line selected here and I go to my records and oh, it's not going to let me do that. Boy, this really is being a bugger right now. Let's see. But data engineering doesn't want to go away. No, that's not what we wanted. I want to get rid of this one. Yep, this one is just stuck. I don't want to do any cleanup with this particular thing. I just want it to go away right now, but it doesn't want to. And in the meantime, I select, there we go. I do, okay. All right. I don't know why all of a sudden it's working, but whatever, I'll take it. Okay, so I have a tax parcel selected. We can see that I only have one feature selected. Great. And if I look at my attributes, I have one tax parcel. Wonderful. Now, if I select the parcel features, this particular item, this tool will select all of the lines and points based on that particular tax parcel. So if I select that, I now have not just my one tax parcel, but it selected the 4 lines and the 8 points that are involved with that. So all the points, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. Yes. So if I needed to do something with all of that data, if I needed to assign all of that to a new record, I'm not just assigning the polygon, but I'm assigning the polygon, the lines, and the points to the same record. So I can do several items with that, or I can delete it all if I want to do that, things like that. So you have some flexibility. It's not just the line or just the point or just the polygon. I can actually select just this polygon. And from that, I can select parcel features and it selects everything that's associated with that particular item. Okay. So this is really where you can start to separate your features by assigning them to particular records, breaking them up, planarizing, really getting down to the nitty gritty of just the features that should be involved there. So I can see what is associated with that particular polygon. And I can see that maybe I've got some lines that might be, it could be those commencement to point of beginning lines. It could be just reference lines. It might be lines that part of the migration process maybe should have been split, but are still all together. Maybe it was something that we merged before. Who knows? But I could, if I needed to, I could break these things up. I can split them into different COGO lines, lots of different items or options here, if that were a problem, or just sometimes it's just good information to know. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with that, but that particular tool for parcel features is just there so that you can select any one item. I could select just a point, grab that, and it would show me everything associated with that point or line or poly. So I don't recall at which version that item came in, but if you haven't seen that, that's what that particular item is for. As far as tools go, there are a few items that have been added, like construct geodetic, mirror and array have been there for a little while. But there may be some of these, especially with making routes, calibrating routes, not really fabric-y, but items that just realize that the tool selection is increasing, and not every tool is fabric related, right? These are all tools that are available, whether you're in your records tab or in your, if you don't have a fabric, you're just in an edit tab, ribbon, edit ribbon. It's the exact same set of tools. So they can be used for any purpose, fabric or not fabric. So just because it's here in our records tab under the drop down here, these are not just fabric tools. These are anything tools. It's the same list. Okay. And they're the same list of tools that are in my modify here. Okay. So same set of tools. Here I just have them listed alphabetically, just my own preference, but I'm more of the pane type of user rather than a drop down user. So yeah, but just be aware of that. There are going to be new tools from time to time. Some of them good, some of them, I'll say good for fabric. Some of them make no sense for fabric. So yeah, just be aware. And you can modify what tools you see. You can go into the customize and get rid of tools that you're just never going to use. I have not, because I like to see what new tools come out. So I don't want to remove any of them. But things like calibrate route, probably not something I'm ever going to use, or the construct route. Things like that. I'm never going to do those things, but I'm not going to remove them at this point in time because I like to see what comes out. I'm curious that way. If I need to, though, I can increase my screen real estate and get 4 wide and to be able to see that instead. But to each his own, and you, I'm sure, have your way of looking at things. Now the real changes, though, have come in the quality ribbon. So I'm just going to somewhat start and go left to right here. So in the evaluation group here, there is a drop down here for parcel layers. This is new. What I can do is I can check things as far as distance mismatches on connection lines specifically, or any of my parcel lines. Now this doesn't mean just your tax parcels, right? This is any of our polygon lines, so line features. So I can look for distance mismatches. So where the COGO and their shape length don't match. I can check line vertices. So what it does is it symbolizes some of those line vertices. So I can very quickly identify densified curves or things like that. Or if I see things that are really close together. And then I can check for line segments that are too short. So especially like in ArcMap fabric, we had the tool to check fabric, and it would tell us if we had short segments, very short segments. Same thing here. This will check for very short segments, and then I can go in and make those modifications. I didn't see in ArcMap fabric, I would have to take that whole list of object IDs, go search for them, and then decide how to make those things, how to correct those things, right? Decide what was going to happen to them. Well, that was that was a pain in the rear, right? And really those are, I'll say they're warnings. They're warnings that you could potentially have problems there. Having a short segment is not actually an error, but a warning. It could lead to bad snapping. You know, if you snap to the wrong vertex here or there, you could end up with some mismatches that way. So the more that you can correct those short segments, the better off your data will be. Is it bad to have them? No, it's not a true error, but a warning. But the nice part is that this tool here, this under our evaluation group, points those things out for us very quickly, and we can see them and move on and correct them and decide how they should look. So if I were to say, go with a distance mismatch, and I have my tax parcels turned on, so I'll grab that. So it's only going to list what's in your table of contents, whether it's turned on or not. Notice I don't have a lot of these things turned on, but it still lists them. I can have that there. And then what you'll see, and I'm going to shrink some of these up here. I got a new layer that says distance mismatch on tax parcel. And you can keep these in your map if you want. You know, you could maybe put that down in my tax parcel grouping, and I could keep it down here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that on, and it's going to highlight with a thick orange line where I have issues. Okay, I am going to turn off my subdivisions, so I don't want to see those, and I'm going to turn my points off. And what else do I have? My encumbrances, I'm going to turn those off because I want to see just where I have issues with my lines. Okay, now I know I have issues. Don't tell me I don't have issues. Oh, there's an issue. Okay, I know I have issues. Okay. And I like that once you zoom in, it will tell you what the mismatch is. All right, so it's off by a foot. So if I were to investigate and select that particular line, and I go look at my line here, and it tells me that my distance says 117.3, which I can see from my label here, but my actual says 116.3. So I probably had a typo or something, or maybe I trimmed off approximately a foot for some reason. So it looks like all of these are off about a foot, and they all say 117.3. So then I would need to determine what is correct, right? So I'd go back to my plat. Is it supposed to be 117.3 or 116.3? If it's supposed to be 116.3, then I just had a typo on my COGO values, and I can go correct that. But if it's supposed to be 117.3, then I would need to figure out, is my alley too wide? Is my road too wide by a foot? I have to figure out where that correction needs to go. But by this being able to point that out, especially if I was just doing an edit right here or just entering the subdivision, it could tell me that before I even left the area. It's not that I would have to come back later and find this. I could just have this on and be able to run this particular tool and see my blunder right from the get-go. Okay. So being able to have that turn on and just be able to run it on this particular area. And this ran it actually on all my tax parcel lines. So I could go countywide and see my area here and see where I have other issues. Okay. So that's one particular tool. So that was using the distance mismatch. So I'll just turn that off for the moment. Okay, so if I go to line vertices, and I'll do the same thing, I'll just keep it all within tax parcel. You can see that it has now added a new layer to my table of contents, line vertices, the tax parcel. And oh, the dashed line here shows me my extent. So it's kind of hard to see here. So it just turned off, but it will show you the extent at which you were checking information. So I'm going to go find an area where I have more cul-de-sacs and potential for curve issues. And I'm going to remove that right now and just do it again. Let's go, that was line vertices, tax parcel, say okay. And turn on. What, I don't have problems? Oh, that's fantastic, but that doesn't generally happen. Let me zoom to my layer here, or just zoom out until I see my issues. Oh yeah, I got issues. Okay, so that ran my whole thing. So I can see if I have issues going on. And so this is showing me vertices that potentially have problems. So if I'm zooming in here, it's saying, okay, why do I have a vertex here and here? If it's the same bearing on both sides, I could probably remove this vertex. Okay, but I can also come in and investigate. Do I have points that are very, very close to each other? It looks like I've got maybe excess line, something like that, because that looks okay, right? But it's pointing out potential problems. So if I were to select over here, I just have one line. If I select over here, well, it shows me it's just still one line, although that seems bizarre. It does look kind of strange. No, but it's just one line. Okay. But that means that this is probably one line with, there's no reason for this vertex to be here. So I could come in and, you can see what's here, see what's going on. I can go right into edit my vertices and select that particular item. No, I just want to select the one line. Thank you. Only select this. There we go. And then I can come in and delete the excess vertex. There we go, and save that. And now that particular point is gone from my my parcel layer, just notification tool, that's gone. I don't have to worry about that one now. We've made the quick correction. And so I can continue around. And so a lot of it's going to be, hey, these vertices don't need to be there. And then if I see, I've got some densified items here, there might be a curve, or, oh, look, it's mostly going to be a lakeshore. I've got lakeshore items, but I'm going to guess if I turn my encumbrances on, yes, I'm also seeing excess vertices where I probably ran a topology, I'll say the old fashioned way, and it cracked my lines here. I don't need that to be cracked anymore. So I could remove these vertices so that these are straight lines for my lots and my tax parcels, but yet I'm going to have my easement over the top, but they don't need to crack each other anymore. So I can see that, yeah, I've got some things going on. When I have items like this going out to a lakeshore, that's probably that, 20 feet plus or minus to the lakeshore. If you want to keep track of that and have that as a separate line segment, don't remove these vertices. So if you want there to be a difference of labeling or things like that, don't remove them. Otherwise, you'll end up with one long line segment. So you just want to keep track of that and don't go crazy, right? Know what you're doing. You still have to know what you're doing. Just because this points out something as a potential error doesn't mean it is an error. It's just pointing stuff out to you, allowing you the ability to quickly find and go correct things that may be an issue. They may not be issues. So don't just assume that everything it shows you is an actual error. It's just pointing out potential. And then the too short, let's look at the too short stuff. Again, I'm just going to keep on with tax parcels since that's what I've got going on. And again, it adds to my table of contents and it's going to show me some lighter orange stuff. And I'm going to turn off those encumbrances so we don't see those. And so I can see that I've got some little orange segments here. And again, I've got a bookmark here. Let's see. So I've got an orange little dot right there. Again, it points out or labels how much of a difference this is. And I'm going to guess that you may have seen this type of item in your own data. So this is only 1/100th of a foot, right? But I'm going to guess that this was supposed to be a straight line coming from the north to the south all the way to this point. And this line was also supposed to come all the way down to this point, not coming together here. Now, is 1/100th of a foot a big deal? Probably not, but it's still misrepresenting the actual shape of the feature that I'm wanting to represent. Okay, so it's still, in my case, in my train of thought, it's still a problem. So I want to correct this. So this is one of those items that a very quick correction is going to be using merge points, because really I want to get rid of this point and I want to get rid of this segment and I want to bring these other two segments all the way down to this point. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I like to use the pane, but this one is sitting right here. So I'll just click on that. So this is my merge points and it's saying select 2 or more parcel points. It's also telling me my layer is not visible. What layer? Well, that's going to be my points. My points layer is not visible. So I'll turn on my points so it can see those points. Now I can use the select tool here select those 2 points. And with the darker blue line is telling me, you know, if I choose to preserve this particular point, that's how it's going to be corrected, where that darker blue line is going. If I want the other point to be preserved, then it's showing me what it's going to do there. Okay, so once I decide which point to preserve, then I'm going to click merge. I love that preview. And now I have now corrected, I've gotten rid of that short segment and I have corrected my lines there. That was very easy to use, just merge points, pick which one to keep, and it gets rid of the line segment, the extra vertex, and pulls the 2 remaining line segments down to the correct location. Love that tool. Merge points is an awesome tool. So it's not doing, in the ArcMap fabric, we had a, I don't think it was called merge, it was a mean points tool. And that particular tool was used, I'll say, more with like center of circles, like radial points. Could be the center of a cul-de-sac type of situation, or big curves, whatever. So wherever that radial point was, you may have done a mean points to make sure that all your curves are coming off the exact same center if they were very close. This is not the same. Okay, mean points is not a thing here because we do not have radial points in our fabric anymore. Radial points were always auto-generated behind the scenes in the ArcMap fabric. Radial points were not migrated into the Pro fabric. But our merge points will actually merge points together, even if there's a line that attaches them, so to speak. With the old mean points, we could not do that. If there was a line segment between the points, it wouldn't do it because it would think it's going to collapse that line. Well, that's exactly what we're trying to do. So now we have merge points, which does allow you to pick which point to keep, and it shows you the preview, and then it will actually remove any excess points and line features. And you notice that it also corrected the polygon. So it didn't leave the polygon sitting up here. Now I have to recreate that. It corrected, got rid of the excess point, got rid of the excess line, fixed the remaining lines, and fixed the polygon, all by using the merge point tool. Okay. So that is a very easy way to go ahead and correct this particular item of having the too short of lines, especially when we find that those are truly the 100th of a foot type of lines. Okay, so if I zoom out again, I'm sure I'm going to see more of those. I'll turn those points off at the moment so I can see my little orange pieces. Yeah, so I can see most of them are going to be around water features. Pretty typical. We probably had some lake features with some very short segments going around, or extending lines to the shore. We might have some of those little bitty segments. So yeah, that's probably going to be most of that. And I can just go in and very quickly merge points around those and focus that. And you could probably correct that in a couple hours. You know, that's a lot of points, but very easy to correct. A few seconds a piece, less than a minute. You can correct a lot of features very quickly. So that's what these particular tools here are. And if you have polygons, you know, again, looking for densified curves on the vertices here. But most of the time, you know, we're looking at some of these distance mismatches and things like that. So that is a particular tool, especially for quality control, that you can very quickly see potential blunders before you go in and start validating data, and where you're seeing maybe a lot more. These are just very quick spatial things that are using some of the background information that's already in your data. Just kind of like there used to be in ArcMap Fabric, there was a Parcel Fabric quality add-on tool that you could have downloaded from GitHub, I believe, that you could add on. And it's just taking like the misclose ratio and visualizing it for you. So instead of trying to set up queries and things like that, it's just trying to put it out there so you can very quickly find where you have bad miscloses and you can go fix those things. This is the same kind of thing. We're just trying to improve the quality. You can have these things turned on. So as you come into an area to do an edit, run this real quick, fix anything that's in the area so you're not starting out with potential problems. Do your thing, whatever it is that you're doing, and then do this again so that you find out if you've added any potential errors. So we don't want to add any errors to our data. We're trying to make it better. Okay. All right, so that is in the evaluation group. That's that parcel layers drop down. The other item is the addition of this gaps and overlaps group. So first off, I'm going to remove these 3 that we added. Just going to remove those right now. Yep. All right. So what happens here for gaps and overlaps, this is going to highlight little gaps and overlaps. And what we're going to do, I'm going to first use the drop down to set my settings. Okay. So what am I looking for? How wide? How wide? 6 feet, 4 feet, whatever it is that we're looking for. You can change that. You can modify that. Strictly a configuration setting. So feel free to modify that. And then it's asking what layer. All right, so this is going to list absolutely everything you've got going on. So I'm just going to say tax parcels again. That's what I have turned on. And you can choose your colors, whatever works for you. That way, if you have any color blindness, or especially if you're the dark theme, light theme, whatever you have going on, you make sure these colors work for you. Okay, so I've set my settings. Great. Now I'm actually going to click the button at the top because I can see nothing. You can't see my hands. Nothing has happened yet, right? Until I click the button, highlight. Now it's going, now it's doing its thing. Granted, I didn't probably need to be zoomed out this far, but it's going to go through and highlight my gaps and overlaps within that 6 foot tolerance. Yeah, I probably didn't need to be zoomed out this far. Let me just do a quick cancel on that and zoom in. Yeah, that's what I thought. You know, sometimes canceling takes just as long. Sorry about that. Anyway, this is fantastic. It's a great tool when you don't try to do it countywide. Oh, come on. I'd like to tell it to be reasonable, but it can't hear me. Well. Maybe I should just let it go. Anyway, what it's going to do, if I get it to work, anyway, it'll point out any little gaps or little overlaps. So it's not looking for major, let's say, road gaps. It's not looking for the 33-foot gaps that might be in your tax parcels, or the 60 or the 80-foot, gaps, because you probably have those in your easement group or your encumbrances group. Those aren't necessarily going to be in your tax parcel group. So it's not looking for those types of items. It's looking for the small items that are within your tolerance. So like 0 to 6 feet, because I think I left that at 6 feet. So it's looking for those types of small gaps or overlaps. It's not looking for the big ones. None of this is auto-correcting anything. So even when it does highlight the gaps and overlaps, it's not correcting. This is not topology. So your topology has a separate tolerance, and that might be, if you've left it alone, it might be, say, 0.003 feet, because that's part of your coordinate system. If you have modified that tolerance, it might be, you maybe took it to 1/100th of a foot, 1/10th of a foot, something like that. In that case, anything under that tolerance, the software is going to automatically fix with topology. This is not topology. This is merely highlighting potential problems. No correction happening. It's saying, you come look at this. You come check to see if this is an actual problem. It's in topology when they're minute little things. Yeah, go ahead and let the software correct that. But this stuff, like up to 6 feet, no, we want to see, do I just have a sliver gap? Or is it one of those, like, I have a densified curve and an actual curve, like a true curve and a densified one. So now they're kind of going back and forth across each other. Those types of things. Do we want to make those corrections? How do we want to make those corrections? Do we want to use, let's say, the simplify by straight lines and circular arcs tool to correct, a densified curve into a true curve, right? So we're going to be able to have those potential items to correct on our own. And wow, this is really frustrating. Okay, can I just get rid of the map? No, nope, it won't let me go into anything. Okay, well, don't ever do this, but I'm gonna do it. Esri will tell you never do this, because if it crashes, they want to know. But I'm going to close it. I'm gonna end that task because it's not doing it for me. Okay, bye-bye ArcMap or Pro. Okay, bring it back. Sorry about that. I don't know why it got caught, but it shouldn't take that long to cancel. So I'm opening Pro again here. But anyway, I just want to point out that any of those tools that we just talked about with the small segments and the distance mismatch and any of those line vertice items, none of those do any sort of auto correcting. They're merely visual things to point out where there could be potential for problems. Okay. All right, so let's get that back. Sure. Just wouldn't be the same without a technical hiccup. Datum transformation. Okay, let me get back into that particular, there we go. I just have to get it smaller to get under my zoom bar here. Let's go to the records. Let's go to the quality actually. Quality ribbon, and make sure this is set. Let's pick our layer, tax parcel, but I'm going to zoom in before I do anything. Let's just zoom into an area here. Now I'm going to click the button. Now it should go through and it shouldn't take hardly any time. It's going to, it's hard to see around the very edge. You can see I have this dashed line. That's going to show me the area or the extent of where it has checked. So this did not go county-wide, which was my original problem, is I was too far zoomed out. So it caught a little piece that was in there. So it highlighted that. And because it's green means I have a slight overlap right here. Okay. So there's a slight overlap issue right there. Now, if I were to zoom to a different area, let's see if we have anything else, and I can just continue to say highlight, it'll go through and highlight. So you don't have to be contiguous contiguous areas. I could go zoom around and find things. So I can see, yeah, I've got an issue going on here in this particular plat. Looks like something might have been grabbed and slightly moved because I've got gaps in the yellow and overlaps in the green. Looks like something shifted a little bit. So that would certainly draw my attention to want to come here and see what happened and probably make one easy correction and move something and it'd be all hunky-dory again. Okay. Or I can use my second favorite tool, which is the align edge tool. I still want to get a t-shirt that says I heart align edge and move everything. So yeah, so other things there that can be done. But anyway, that's what the highlight is for. And then if you've made corrections, you can just click the clear, it'll get rid of all that. And then you can, if you've made corrections, then you can go ahead and do the highlight again and see if everything has been updated. So just keep in mind that with any of these, especially when they add from the parcel layers, when they add a layer, it doesn't just automatically rerun if you've made corrections. So you're going to want to occasionally remove it and rerun it. Same thing with the highlight. It doesn't add a new layer, but you're going to want to clear it and then run it on occasion just to see if you've made corrections to the data. So those are some of the quality enhancements, tool enhancements. I just wanted to make sure that we pointed out on the quality ribbon. As far as the very end here with the consistency check, weighted least square adjustments, those tools have been there for a little while. They may not have been in a particular grouping like that. They may have just been in the drop-down list. So now they are in a grouping here on the quality ribbon. But those items are still there. And just keep in mind, consistency check, you do not need control to do that. You're just running consistency items. similar to what we just looked at in the parcel layers dropdown and some of the gaps and overlaps. But consistency check is also checking all of the information, how it fits together, especially if you have multiple records and they're all trying to come from the same location. You can see how that is fitting together. But no control is needed on that one. But a weighted least squares, yes, requires at least 2 control points to be able to compute what should be the logical representation of the data within. Okay. And of course, you can run weighted least squares with different tolerances, different, I'll say, accuracy adjustments. And then when you're happy, then you can click the apply. You don't have to worry about running it and then undoing. No, you can run. And once you're happy with the result, then you click the apply and it'll run through that. Okay. So that makes it easy too. Now, I know a lot of folks don't necessarily use weighted least squares, things like that, which is just fine. That is, I'll say, more of a surveyor opinion on the math behind the scenes and things like that. So if your surveyor does not particularly agree with the math going on, I fully understand that they don't want you to use weighted least squares. The math engine has been updated though from like what was an ArcMap. So now it is the Dynadjust engine math going on in the background, which seems to be more accepted by surveyors than what we used to have. The ArcMap weighted least squares used a very abbreviated mathematical formula. And so a lot of surveyors especially did not care for that because it was minimizing, I'll say, some of the detail that used to be in survey data. So by having the new engine here, that's why we now have the ability to put separate weighting on bearings versus distances on specific lines and things like that. So a lot more detail in the math behind the scenes. So if you are a surveyor or you work very closely with your surveyor, look into that Dynadjust math engine and determine if you do or do not want to use least square adjustments in your day-to-day workflows. So that is definitely something that you may want to work out and make decisions if you're going to use or not. I'm not going to go through those today. Those could take a little longer, so we don't have that much time left. So one of the things I did mention on the Traverse tool, I wanted to show you very quickly. On the Traverse tool, if I were to, all right, let's pick I'm going to my text parcel lines, and we'll have a starting point here. And I am going to put in my first thing. I'm going to say 45 degrees to the northeast. And I'm going to go, what kind do I have here? It's okay, 500 feet. Okay, and now I'm going to put in, say, my asterisk. Oh, need to do that. And I'm going to, wrong thing, wrong item. That was just a straight distance. Okay, let me remove that line. Delete that line. Okay. Okay. Trying to do a curve here, not that. Okay. And I'm gonna go radius of 100 feet, arc length of 80 feet. Okay, so now I have a curve. And now let's say I remembered, oh shoot, okay, that 45 I didn't put, I just did the degrees. I didn't do the I didn't do the minutes or seconds. Whoops. Well, this curve is tangent to 45. It's not tangent to 45 with minutes and seconds. But if I come up here and correct it and say this is supposed to be 30 and this is supposed to be, oh, I don't know, 14. Sure. Notice that because I had the asterisk for showing this was tangent, it automatically updated the tangency of my curve to match that original line. Okay. So by me specifically entering in the asterisk to show tangency of that curve to the previous segment, if I have to correct that previous segment, anything beyond that that is showing as tangent by having this little asterisk here, that will automatically be corrected. If I did not have that in there and I just entered a non-tangent curve, it's just a curve that was not tangent to the previous segment, then nothing would happen. Okay. But by having that asterisk to show it was tangent, if I make a correction to the line segment to which it was tangent, anything tangent to that will be auto-corrected. Woohoo! So glad I can have the software do the math for me. I don't have to do it. Okay, so a couple of other items, and I will say will be miscellaneous information. All right. Reconcile and divide. Two different things, obviously. So the divide tool, I'm going to just get out of this real quick. If you are a divide tool user, which I'm going to guess most people are because it's a good tool. So if I were to select this, we know how to use the divide. We can come into the tool. We can choose if we're going to do it by proportional, equal, or equal areas, or equal width, and I can do all of my things here. Awesome. We can now script that. So if you're trying to do, let's say, online services, Azure, Amazon, whatever it is you're trying to do, and you're trying to pass information via scripting, divide is now, I'll say, a scriptable tool. So it's exposed on the REST API. So if that's what you're familiar with, it is now available. So you can, it has parcel specific awareness to it now as a tool. So if I have a specific tool ID and I'm passing that via the script and into the divide tool, it knows what that is. That didn't used to be that way. The divide tool didn't have that parcel specific awareness, but now it does. And so now because of that, it can be exposed on the REST API, which means we can now pass that feature into the divide tool via that with the parameters, you know, if it's going to be proportional area, equal area, whatever the parameters are, all of that can be passed via scripting. So you don't have to necessarily be doing it within the map and you have to select and do all of this. You can actually do it via scripting. So if you have certain tools that you have scripted to do certain things, whether it be some tasks you have done or whatever it might be, but if you're going to be doing it via the REST API, you can now add the divide tool to your list of items, you know, tools in your quiver for the REST API. So where it didn't used to exist, once you go to the Fabric version 5, Pro 2.9, Enterprise 10.9.1, you're golden. You're able to do those things. If you have done a similar item, but with the reconcile tool, so you've got your version, sorry, that sun is coming in, but you've got your reconcile. And if you ever had timeout issues where you've been trying to reconcile things using, like, say, REST API, things like that, and you've had timeout issues, those have now been corrected. So it doesn't matter if it takes seconds or it takes 10 minutes or it takes 10 hours. It's going to go until it either completes or errors out due to something else, but it's not going to be a timeout issue. And I should mention, that is not Fabric specific. That is just branch versioning specific, so to speak. So it's not just a Fabric thing, but anytime you're working with branch versioning via service, so you're going to be posting, reconciling, posting, you're not going to have a timeout issue any longer. And reconcile, if you didn't know, I mean, that runs asynchronously, so you don't have to worry about some of the other other items that might be going on. So if you're running multiple scripts and things like that, there could be multiple things happening. Running that reconcile runs asynchronously, so you don't have to worry about when you start it in conjunction with other things. You can run it, let it go, and like I said, no timeout issues are going to happen any longer. So if you're on the scripting side of things and the REST API side of things, be aware that you now can use the divide tool, and you should no longer have any timeout issues with reconcile when you get here. Okay, I know we're coming down to the end here, so I'm just going to jump right back into the PowerPoint real quick to show you. And that's those were some of the scripting updates I was talking about with the REST API information there. And some of the near term, which would be Pro 3.0 plans. There's going to be some potential new items when it comes to annexation. some sort of predefined workflows when it comes to annexation, being able to do a transfer, and it creates that auto history, things like that. Because right now, if I were to have existing parcels and they're, I'll say, outside the county, in the county, and now they're going to be annexed into a city. If I want to create the history of what it is right now, I would have to take my parcels, duplicate them, take one set, mark them as historic, keep the new set, and now reattribute them with a city parcel number rather than their previous county parcel number. So that way I would have that history going on. But what's going to happen is they're actually coming up with basically a task that will take care of those items so that you don't forget to create the history and things like that. So whether it's an annexation, a disconnection, a transfer of some kind anyway, they're coming up with a wizard, whether it be a task or just another type of wizard or tool to be able to do that for you. Reconstructing features from seeds. So like when we shrink to seeds and then reconstruct, there's going to be some enhancements to that. Right now, I guess I've not had a lot of issues, but other folks have had issues with that when they have shrunk to take parcels and shrink to seeds, because some of the lines may or may not be part of the same record as what the polygon was. The lines may have been generated from a different record than the parcel that you just shrunk to a seed, so it doesn't like to build because there's no polygon, I'm sorry, there's no line there. So there's going to be some enhancements to that. So even if they're up different records, it will see them and be able to bring them down. Layout templates, or there's going to be some enhancements to that so that you can do some more things with even with map series or just within the layout itself, within the mapping and the symbology and things like that. If you're a really fast typer, when it comes to the traverse tool, let's say you're really fast and you're ahead of the traverse tool showing the different lines there. There have been some performance enhancements that they're working on so that you don't get skipped, because sometimes if you do type too fast, it will just skip a line and now you have to go back and read through, and now you've just wasted your time of being a fast type. So, excuse me. There are some performance enhancements to the traverse tool to be able to collect the information in the traverse tool, even if it's not displaying it in the map as quickly as you're typing it in. So they're really wanting to capture your speed, even if it can't display it in the map. The map will catch up, but we really want to capture what you're typing. And then of course, the last item that they really are working to enhance is 3D. If you're looking to go 3D, those are having some serious enhancement considerations. There are not a lot of, right now it's difficult. You'd have to actually create those 3D objects, but really what they're trying to do is bring in the 3D cadaster into the fabric and be able to bring that in so that your 3D workability is going to be that much better and enhanced. Right now, if you want to go 3D, you actually have to take that information and go create a 3D object out of it instead. So if you're looking forward to 3D, it's on the near term Esri list. And if you're not familiar with some of the resources that are available to you, I just want you to be aware. And again, all of these links will be emailed to you. There is still the Esri meetup. The meetups, however, are being moved over to the Esri community. They're not all moved over yet, so go ahead and be a member of both. That way you'll get all the notifications when there's new, I'll say webinars out there, new meetups, and you can get onto the community page where you can have videos. So sometimes like some of the Esri crew will just put out here's a 30-second video for this little topic. Here's a 12-minute video on running a least square adjustment, things like that. So that way you can see those all the time. You don't have to wait for, let's say, a monthly meetup, which might not be about the right topic. But some of the Esri folks are constantly posting new videos. And then the parcel fabric ideas, that's where we really need to be focusing any of our comments, things we'd like to see, things that are just broken, that aren't working the way that we expect them to. We need to put those ideas out there. And if other folks have ideas and you're looking at them, you're like, yeah, I like that. Be sure to give those thumbs up, give them those kudos, because that's where they get their numbers from. We've had 150 people like this idea. How do we make it work? Or we only have 2 people here. Well, that's probably not a priority then. But yeah, the more kudos and the more ideas we put out there, that's where Esri goes to get their enhancements, is right off this ideas page. So if you have ideas or even just corrections to tools, I mean, they look at that stuff even for something like, you know, you spelled this word wrong or stuff like that. They'll go see that. They'll make those corrections. And it's nice because you see them, it'll go from an idea to in the project plan to implemented. Yay. And you're like, woohoo, my idea got recognition, you know, those types of things. And then the Parcel Fabric events, it's the events part that is really basically the meetups. They're moving the meetups into events so that they're hosting their own instead of having a third-party meetup software doing that for us. But then the blogs are there, that kind of thing. So if you're not familiar with the Esri community Parcel Fabric page, I suggest you get there. And then when you're there, and I will show you that here. When you're there on the community page, you can subscribe. Okay, so I'm not signed in right now, so I can't see the events right now, but you can subscribe and modify your subscription notifications. Otherwise, you're going to get a notification every time somebody asks a question, enters a blog, replies to a blog, all kinds of stuff. So you could get thousands of emails, but make sure you change your subscription notifications. So I want to know every time a video is posted, but I don't need to know every time a blog post is posted, you know, those kinds of things. And then you can see that any of the new things that have come up. So this was an idea that came up. Here was a post, more ideas. Sometimes there's videos. If I go into the videos themselves. Okay, so there was a meetup. That video was posted. Did I go? No, this is latest activity. Whoops. Oh, I am in videos, but sometimes there will be, you know, a 4-minute demo showing an example of a record-driven workflow, a utility easement, 17-minute video for something, 30-second video showing an offset tool. Very nice little quick, easy things that just get posted randomly, but it's nice to know when those happen. So it's good to see when those things come up. And then we have, like I said, the ideas page. And so we can see how many are open, clarification, things that are already offered. Maybe they just didn't understand how to use the tool. Things that are under consideration in the product plan, already implemented, and then closed. So we can certainly see how these are. You know, this one is under consideration. Show Kogo attributes in parcel line feature templates. Okay, so this would be something that if you really like it, go and thumb it up. Okay, now I'm not seeing, I mean, 3 doesn't seem like much. So I'm going to guess there was a whole bunch more before it went under consideration. Because once it switches categories, a lot of times it needs to be bumped up again. Okay. But anyway, so that's where you can kind of see what's going on. And you can filter this to just show me all the open ones or whatever you want to see here. But I highly recommend people get used to this particular page. It's a great spot to go. Some of the other items as far as resources go, if you want to be considered early adopter, I would go to the early adopter site and get your name in the list. So if you just can't wait to get your hands on the latest and greatest, get your name in there and start getting notifications for when the next thing comes out. And then if you just have questions on the Parcel Fabric in general, you're not there yet, you're not sure, but maybe you just need pointers to get some of your teams on board. Going and looking at some of these categories here in this particular website, it just gives you some pointers as to, you know, if you're trying to talk your board into something, you want to show some of those pointers, what's it going to take to integrate this? What's it going to take, you know, to deploy this, to license it, you know, those types of details. That's really the place to go. And you're able to share that with everybody and be able to say, this is what it's going to take for us to do this. This is what I want to see out of it. This is how we're going to improve our performance. All of that stuff is there for you. So if you need help justifying the migration, this is a great spot to start. Okay. All right, well, I took us right down to the wire. So I don't know if there's any questions. I am more than happy to answer questions. Like I said, there will be an email that you'll be receiving. I don't know who from, either myself or from the WLIA, which will have all of these links in there. And I know that I sent out, for anybody who was pre-registered last week, I sent out like the slide handouts, so I can certainly resend that in the same email so that everybody has that. But I would be happy to do so. But if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer that. But I know it is end of the day and I'm sure everybody's itching to get out. Any questions? Shout them out.
Doesn't seem so.
No questions? Well, I am very sorry I could not be there in person. I certainly plan to be there. I hope you guys didn't all have to drive through the ice storm. And it looks like the hotel is beautiful. So enjoy the rest of the conference. And if anybody has questions, be sure to reach out. My coworker made the drive. He was able to get there. He's much closer to you than I am. So he'll be at the booth. So if there's any questions, be sure to stop by and say hi to Alex at the booth. And if you want to chat with me, he will get you my info. So, all right, well, have a great rest of your conference, and I hope to see you soon. All right, bye.